Hey everybody, welcome to Ship Show. My name is Clyde, and with me in the studio today is Skada. Skada, say hello to the YouTube people.
Whammy!
There it is. It is that time again. So obviously we had our coupon come back on December 4th, and that means that folks can get 25% off of research, or not research ships, but resource ships. And so a couple of, maybe a week ago, week and a little bit more, we did our discussion on the coal ships, which I think went pretty well. It's been really well received on YouTube. So thank you if you watched that video or if you shared it with friends. And then today we're doing our steel video. Obviously the coupon's been out for about 4 or 5 days now. And so as a result of that, some of you may have already spent it, but if you haven't.
You already spent it.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is what it is.
Well, I mean, you do your best to put this thing out. To be fair, I spent my old coupon like 2 days before the end. Somebody might have been in my boat. But,
I think there's plenty of folks, especially as we enter this this patch and this season, where people are earning steel by playing their tier 8s and tier 9s, and maybe having, maybe they're making a decision on what they're going to spend it on still. So
yeah,
still relevant. And regardless, this video on YouTube will still be relevant in February if you want to know what two guys who don't know anything think about Shikishima.
Here it comes, our opinions.
Oh.
Hey everybody, we're gonna talk about boats. So okay, so as is tradition, we have the resource ship metrics image here. So we've got that up on the screen. Every time I do the slides for this, or the graphics, or whatever you want to call it, they're more graphics than slides. But every time I put these graphics together, I go in and I'm surprised by how few steel ships there are. There's exactly 13 of them available now. So we've got 12 tier 10s and 1 tier 9 steel ship. And this is the class breakdown. You got 1 carrier, the FDR. You've got 5 battleships, 4 cruisers, 2 destroyers, and a submarine. What I thought was really interesting thinking about this, and we probably talked about this in the past, Skada, is, this is the one in steel ships. It's a lot of battleships, but in coal ships, it's a lot of cruisers and destroyers. And I don't know if there's any real reason for that. Maybe Wargaming thinks about the people who earn steel and what they want versus the people who earn coal and what they want. Or maybe it's just arbitrary. I have to imagine there's some thought that's put into that. But I did think it was interesting that there's a lot of choices here for battleships.
I know that historically there was a feeling that steel ships were better than, let's say, coal ships, right?
Like you said, historically there is a feeling.
I think in the player base, I think,
sure,
and that may still be the case with a lot of folks, where they think steel ships are just better than coal ships. And I would contend over time that isn't necessarily true, and that you look at ships that have been removed, like Smolensk and Thunderer, those were originally coal ships, and so I question that maybe they're better, and they're different. We talk about this a lot too when we talk about what's available, the offerings in the Research Bureau, and obviously the Research Bureau number of ships there is like exceeding steel ships now at this point, right? I mean, that's like, that's where they're putting, and those ships usually have almost like a side grade kind of look and feel, or a gimmicky look and feel. They do feel different in a lot of ways, but I don't know. I'd love, you and I, we love the inside baseball of everything about this. So yeah, I'd love to be able to sit down with somebody on the whoever decides this crap team, and just have them be like,
you're talking about Jerry. I think he's the head of that team.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to sit down with him and then just have them go, well, this is why. Like, and there's, you talk about some of these ships, and I don't necessarily think there's a bad steel ship, but there definitely are lesser or greater, and a lot of times they aren't better than something you could get for some of the resource. So it's kind of interesting as to which is what and what those decisions were.
Well, and we've seen some changes over time as well, like where a steel ship came out and it was special, and then the game in general advanced. And this is definitely going to come up tonight when we talk about some of these ships. The game in general advanced, and as a result, now there's tech tree ships or other premiums that might compete pretty well with those steel ships, which for a moment were really potent or really special or really unique. And then the game kind of like enveloped that concept and made it a little bit more commonplace. And so I think that's something we'll be sure to talk about as well. Ice Cube says maybe they release them for whatever resource they need to drain the most of the time. I mean, maybe. I'd like to think there's a little bit of planning that goes in, You know, if this were me, and it's not, but if it were me, I would sit down and I'd say, okay, guys, these are our product lines. We have steel ships to make, we have coal ships to make, we have research bureau ships to make. These are all part of basically campaigns to keep players playing and encourage them to do particular behaviors. We're also going to release all these things from the tech line. This is your general player-based thing. And I would have goals for every single ship I was going to put out. That's how I would do it. And I'd think about it pretty seriously, and I'd have a team of people around a whiteboard, and we'd be talking about the gaps in current ship capabilities and what we could do there. Like, so I'm sure it's fairly thought through, but I think that what you're talking about, Ice Cube, could be one of the factors that goes into that, right? Like, hey, part of what we want to do is encourage players to earn and spend this resource, so we got to put a carrot out there on a stick in front of them.
Alternatively, I think they put all the new ships for a year up on a you know, a sticky board, and they throw darts at it with blindfolds on, and that's how they decide.
Yeah, that's that's my second choice. If I couldn't do my first one.
They just throw the names in a hat. And it's one of those. Yeah. It's one of those like fuzzy hats that you would see in the Eastern European movie from the 80s. It's like, you know, like it's a fuzzy hat, and they just reach in there and they pull the names out and they go, okay, I guess this one's for steel, and it's like a weird draft. Or maybe there's a guy, maybe there's a guy in charge of the coal store, a guy in charge of the steel store, a guy in charge of the research bureau store, and they just have like a snake draft, like it's fantasy football, and that's how they decide. But part of me thinks that the reason there's more battleships in the steel store is because they set the precedent for charging more for them, and so it makes it, if they put that more expensive ship that's harder for a harder to earn currency in there, then they drain that economy quicker. The other thing I would ask is like I'd love to ask the same people as to like how they set the price. You know, like when you look at the battleships that we're going to talk about, you know, there's 5 of them. 3 of them are 31,000 steel. One of them's 30,000 steel. One of them's 32,000 steel. And is it just like, I can't figure out how they set that. Is it like, well, the hit points? Like, what's the, like, what, like,
it's based on the length of the ship in
right?
Arshins, which is an obsolete Russian unit of measure they don't use anymore.
Yes. It's how many, is it not performance? Because no, like some of the cheaper ones are faster than Shikishima. Like, I don't understand, like, is it, and so I think a lot of that is truly like what I really feel like a lot of that is just like subjective on their end of like, well, what we think the fans of that nation or that the ship that's similar to what we think they'll pay, right? And so it's just kind of arbitrary to me.
And you know, and when you look at them, at least my general thought, I haven't really actually looked at them critically to think about this, but like when you look at this, I've thought to myself that they basically, as they release new ones, they go up 1,000 steel, right? The oldest ones tend to be the cheapest within a given class, that is. And for some reason, Wargaming charges more for battleships, less for destroyers, which is silly to me because they take the same amount of like development time and rendering and artwork and testing.
Yeah,
like all that's exactly the same.
When you think about the nuts and bolts of making the product on their end, it doesn't matter what class it is.
No,
I would presume it takes the same amount of time to develop those things.
I would argue that a destroyer with torpedoes and guns is more complicated than, say, Atlantico, right? Which only has a hull repair and main guns. Let's go, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting, and I think we can talk about that a little bit too as we get a little further in and kind of look at each of the ships, or maybe look at groups of ships.
This is a different ship show where we sit around and we go like, what were they thinking, or you know, like, because like that I know we have a lot of. Interesting. Grigor states BBs take more time to draw than a DD or a CV. I could see that with a CV because you've got a whole lot of flat top, right?
Yeah, they've got more little. You don't have AA guns.
Superstructure is what's going to be fiddly, and you don't have to do that on those as much.
That's actually an interesting point. Jerry probably filled you in on that, I would wager. But
right, Jerry's
in the art department.
Yeah, Jerry's well of a lot of things. Also, you know, shares a flat with Grigor, so it's convenient. He's just in the other room. Jerry's
in the other room eating some cereal. They're talking about me.
This you know, so I feel like we're filling time, but ultimately, like, you know, we've got how many steel ships? You got your slide right in front of me there. 13 steel ships.
Or go ahead.
And this has to last 3.5 hours, folks. So the first hour is just going to be us.
No, it doesn't. It does not have to last 3 hours. I mean, if you want me to edit longer and
on the news.
the only thing I wanted to talk about that we haven't really on this area, I don't mind all the speculation zone here, or speculation zone type stuff at the beginning, but the only other thing I wanted to talk about, just the total cost, right? So if you want to buy all the ships and you have none of them, it's 376,000 steel. That's in pretty big font over this way. If you use a coupon, it cuts the price almost 100,000 steel, not quite, right? Because it's 25% off and it's not quite 400,000, so it's not quite 100,000 in savings. But that's just, you know, some of the motivation for us to use coupons and use them intelligently.
Relevant. I was going to say relevant. This patch, 282,000 steel is also enough to get you halfway to Kitakami. So if you're
it's 136,000 steel to get Kitakami. Come on. But I enjoy the joke.
That's actually kind of insane, though, when you think about it. It's
136,000
there, but that's like, how many of these steel ships could you get for that? Like 4 of them?
There may be a 2 to 4 minute discussion of this in an upcoming video that you can find on Clyde Plays' YouTube channel.
Oh boy.
Which I think you'll enjoy.
Alert.
No. I mean that's a legitimate thing, right? You can get basically 4 or 5 steel ships without using the coupon for the price of Kitakami, but we'll talk about that in the video that you guys will have soon enough.
Yeah, cut this out, edit this.
Snip. Ruggiero says 6 hours. First 3 hours are just Skada kidding around. Zarmet says I buy about 3 ships per year, 2 with the coupon and 1 without. Yeah, and if you can do 3 a year, you'll catch up eventually, because they put out 1 or 2 of these things a year, it seems.
Yeah, that feels about similar to reality for me is at this point as well. And I'm not like, I haven't played rank in a number of years. I don't even go get steel from that. Mm-hmm. And we're not prolific clan battlers either.
Right.
But there's enough other places you get steel just for logging in at this point that I'm able to collect steel ships regularly.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's jump on to our first group of ships. So we have 2 6-packs and a single is how this is going to work out. So our first group of ships are these right here. These are, well, they're the first 6. So we've got FDR, Shikishima, Mecklenburg, Incomparable, Bourgogne, and Austin. And every time we do this, I have to go, Skada, can you talk about FDR? Because I don't know anything about it. Can you kick us off with FDR? She's an aircraft carrier. She's beautiful. And I'll bring her up on the screen here while we're talking.
Yeah, I've had FDR for quite a while. FDR is a United States America Tier 10 aircraft carrier. It's a midway class ship. Was real. When FDR was introduced to the game, it's kind of gimmicky claim to fame was it had everybody thinks the FDR planes as being incredibly tanky. It's just really hard to shoot down. So you have these large flights of a notepad sketch plane, right? The plane that's represented was never really used. I don't think it was actually ever really employed by the US. I think it was designed and maybe it was tested or like a test plane or whatever, but it's this giant plane. I don't even know how feasible it would have been for carrier ops, but you've got this crazy big plane and you get these huge flights of either rocket planes with HE rockets, bombing runs with the HE bombers or torpedo runs, right? And so you think about when these drop, like you've got, I think, it's been a little bit since I've actually played my FDR. I'm trying to think how many how many are in a flight, like of the rocket planes alone. When you do a drop, I think each flight takes off with I don't know, like a dozen planes or something. Only two planes go into the attack drop. And like 2 planes of the Sky Pirate planes, like in the rocket drop.
So it's 14 aircraft in a
14.
Squadron.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah,
it's 14
2 on an attacking flight. There you go.
And like each plane like would put out like 26 rockets, right? So it's like this huge, 42 48 wall of rockets that comes out, and it's this big reticle, and it's just this wad of rockets.
It's massive.
And so they're like really good for like just crapping on battleships and getting fires, or like dumping into a big area on a slow moving destroyer or whatever. My favorite thing with it is the torpedo bombers, because those 2 planes when you go to do a torpedo drop, each drop 4 torpedoes. So I always like to joke that this was, when I used to play it more, would, you know, it's like the flying shimakaze, because one drop is like 8 torpedoes. And
Yeah.
it's, you know, the torpedoes themselves have you know, relatively good damage. And so, like, against large ships, it used to be, there's been some changes, some balancing changes to this ship since release, but it used to be really easy to land all 8 torpedoes in a drop on like a Yamato or a Kurfürst, one of the really large, like tier 10 battleships.
Like a larger, slower moving target.
Yeah.
In other words, you can
now it's a little trickier, because they increased the fan of how the torpedoes drop, and so, like, at least, you know, with my limited CV skill set, it's harder for me to land them all. I generally only land 7 on those large battleships, which, you know, definitely was a nerf that was felt and just angered me greatly. And then the bombers again, like, the bombers are kind of like, they're not like dive bombers. They're like kind of like that low level flight bomb, almost like a British style bomber, but now there's more other, like, American carriers that do that kind of drop, but it just kind of is like a carpet bomb of bombs. It's not a huge number. It's like 8 bombs per drop per flight, but it's not like a dive bomber action. And so, like, think of it more like, if you've played like Louisiana, or if you've played some of those hybrid American battleships in the Tech Tree line, how their bombers kind of work. It kind of feels more like that.
Yeah, gotcha.
And
I
so
actually like
it's
the way those bombers work for the hybrids.
Yeah.
Having not
Yeah.
played FDR more than once or twice on my press account, right? That's why I lean on you for this description. But I do like those bombers on those hybrid battleships. They're easy to hit with, and they seem to punch pretty hard, which is good.
Old school carrier chads are going to tell you, no, the dive bombers, you can do cool things. Like, if you like, I used to watch like a sconce play, and like he's doing the American HE dive bomber drops or Japanese AP dive bomber drops, where he's like turning mid dive and getting these perfect reticles and ships and doing cool stuff. But like, for Joe Schmo carrier player, I don't like the dive bombers very much. I much more prefer the level flight bombers, or that kind of sloping flight bomber. It's just easier to line up your stuff, and you have less to think about. It's easier to make a decent drop. So, so that's kind of like what FDR's planes are about. And then again, the planes all have, you know, really good armor and a lot of hit points, right? And so, like, the plane health is different per plane, but like, just on the torpedo bombers, like, each plane has like 3,500 health, which if you're, you know, savvy on plane health, if you compare that to, and I'm slowly looking at Midway really quick because I don't know the numbers off the top of my head.
Well, I'll fill a little, or if you're mid-sentence, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, just go ahead. But
I want to jump to a conclusionary thing, so I think this is me stalling for you, I guess. I'm going to give it back to you if you get your Midway ready.
Yeah, like a midway torpedo bombers have 2,000 health each, right? And so so you've got, the planes are just way more tanky, and that's a thing you feel when you play, when in this thing you used to see FDR more. I don't feel like I see tons of FDRs and randoms.
That's
anymore.
where I wanted to go with it. Is it, you know, for when it was new, we would see a ton of FDRs out there all the time. There was some adjustments to the ship. They did reduce the ship's capability and power, but I still think that the FDR, when I do see it, is still a ship I'm not excited to see, because it's hard to shoot down those planes. They can still deliver ordnance to you, but I don't know if it's what it once was. Whereas when we look at a ship like Malta, now Malta's newer. She's available in the Coal store. Malta's came out a year ago, basically a little more than a year ago, and we still see Malta a lot. Do you think Malta's more popular than FDR with people who've got both ships? Or do you think it's more popular for you? I guess you shouldn't speak for others, but...
Well, like we talked about in the Cole show, like Malta, I'm not a great carrier player, and my personal damage record's in Malta, so I think Malta's easier to play, or at least easier to stack damage, just because of the way it works. I think what you run into, that's a difference between a ship available for coal and a ship available for steel. And I think a lot of folks, when they go to the coal store, when they go to the steel store, again, they don't buy steel ships as often, more than likely, right? And so, do I buy FDR, or do I buy something that's more traditionally playable? I don't feel like the changes to FDR really, while they did probably reduce its like alpha strike capability, I don't know that really is what would turn people away from buying FDR today. I think But like personally, like just 10 cents, like you brought up Malta is an interesting ship. I would contend that stuff like Nakamov on the tech line is way more powerful, right? And so I think when you look at, first off, just the carrier player base being smaller, and then like what are they going to go spend their steel on, and then what are they going to play? I think that FDR is kind of more of a at this point I feel like it's kind of relegated to just being like a steel cigar, like I went and got this because it's a thing, right?
I can.
And good point by Philip Greenwood in chat, right? The Nakamov planes are way faster. FDR's planes, we're talking about how tanky these planes are, but they're slow as all get out.
Yes.
So it takes forever to cross the map in them, and then the refractory period between drops is insane. So like you make a drop and then it's 25, 26, it's insanely long. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's very long between drops. And so you have to and because the planes are slow, that's why you have these tanky planes and you have these big flights, because you're in the AA bubble forever. Even with, using your speed boost to get out of the way, you have to play FDR drops in a way that when you do one of those drops, you have to know where you're going, which you should always know where you're going when you're playing planes.
Yeah.
But you really have to know where you're going to get to a place where you're not taking as much AA damage, because you're still at that point 10-15 seconds away from being able to drop again. And so you need to be able to kind of like get to open water and then be bringing this wing around and be ready to go again. And so it's kind of harder to stack damage with a hurry on it. That's why it had this big like kind of alpha capability with the torpedoes, in my opinion. Because all of them, the fighter, the rocket planes, the torpedo planes, and the bombers all have this really long refractory period. It's not like it's just the torpedo planes. And I think that's a turn off to a lot of folks who may get the ship and then play it, and then they go, geez, like, man, I gotta wait so long before I get to do damage again. Nobody likes that at all in World of Warships in any class.
In any class.
Nobody wants a long time between clicking the gun button, right? And so that part of it, I think,
or the drop button, or whatever it is. In fact,
and so I think that part of it's probably kind of a turn off.
Yeah, I'll jump in just briefly. We're gonna have a conversation on this show with Angelic Cipher about CV things, and one of the topics we're going to talk about is aircraft carrier attack times and stuff. And what you're talking about is one of the things that like you say, turns off players of any class, but in particular for aircraft carriers, the flight time is a really long thing, and it's a thing that CV mains are trying to optimize. And FDR adds some challenge to that optimization because its planes are so slow. Very survivable planes, as you pointed out, right? But that flight time is long, and thus your optimization is even more important in an FDR than with other aircraft carriers.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, and I don't know that we need to belabor the point on FDR a ton longer. If I look at, I just pull up WoW stats for NA because I'm curious, right? Like, let's see who and we all kind of probably know who the best players. Like number 2 on the leaderboard is Gaishu, works at Wargaming now, right? But it's all, you just got to go down the clan list here, and it's like, yep, those are all Wawa clans.
Those are all
like,
clans I've heard of before.
That's the CC guy in that clan, or the CV guy in that clan that has trucked me before in a random when I made the mistake of hitting ready.
Sure.
And you go down that list, but even some of these guys don't even have 100 games in the ship. Right. Like, they have, they all have insane average damages and all these great stats in it. But if I sort by like most battles, there is one gentleman or gentle person on NA that has 4,600 battles in this ship, and
oh my goodness,
they average 100,000 damage in it. It's pretty good. That's green. That's green in the ship, right? So there are some folks that have played this ship, but again, like most carriers, it's not like it doesn't have like crazy usage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so if this is, again, there's one carrier you can get for steel. If you are a carrier main, then we don't need to tell you which carrier to get.
If you're a carrier main, you probably have this already sorted out, right? But just it's interesting to talk about this one every once in a while, because I do feel like it's the steel ship that time forgot, right? This is a ship that we don't really talk about very much as a community anymore. CV mains either have it or they're not going to get it because they've already decided. But for the rest of us, you talked about how it's a real ship. They actually made this thing. It really existed, not with those aircraft, but they did have this ship out there, and so that's kind of a cool from a historical perspective. But it does seem like it's one of those ships that people will seek out if they are looking for all of the carriers, but it isn't necessarily a CV you need to rush out and get right away. Yeah, there's such great options in the tech trees. And now we have super CVs that are coming out too, which also change the game quite a bit for whether or not you're going to choose to go for FDR or something.
else. Yeah, and at time of this recording, Wargaming's prepping an American CV line split, and people have probably seen some of them in test. The Tier 10 Essex or the Tier 8 Yorktown. So again, you're not want for options for CV play, at these tiers, and I don't necessarily feel like there's a lot of folks, in randoms, it's different than in competitive. CVs have been so extracted. You haven't been able to play CVs in like clan battles for like years at this point.
It's been a while.
And if you did, I don't know that FDR would be the one that anybody who is legitimately good at doing that would use.
Right.
And what I use my FDR for, when I bought my FDR, it was before it was nerfed. When you could still play in clan battles with it, and we used to see them in clan battles.
Yeah.
And what I use my FDR for now is if we have like a dockyard mission that calls for like aerial torpedo hits or torpedo hits where those will count. And maybe I also have a mission at the same time for spotting, and I'll take it into a co-op and go spot things and get aerial torpedo hits, because you can rack up like 30 aerial torpedo hits really quick. That's what it's good for me now.
Yeah, and it's funny because we think of those usages last for a premium ship or for a tech line ship or for whatever, but like that is a way to do it. I feel like steel is such an expensive resource. That's not why you should go out and get an FDR, but if you have one, that's a good usage for it. You know what I mean? It's like that kind of a thing. But so rather than stick with FDR much longer, I think we can probably move along. Yeah, it's always an interesting ship to talk about, that one, because it just feels, like I say, it's an odd boat that has, I think, there's just so many other carriers you can get in other ways that it's not necessarily the top one, and you just don't see them in battles anymore.
Yeah.
So
if I had to guess, it's the second least purchased steel ship at this point, if I had to guess.
Second least. I'm just pondering what that might mean. I think I have some idea of what you would mean for the other one, but we will jump to Shikishima next. So Shikishima, I'll give a basic intro. I've only played Shiki on my press account. She's basically a Yamato that's got did they put 460s or 457s on Shikishima?
510s or 508s.
Oh, they're 510s, I think. 508s are on
I always get confused because Incomparable has like 510s and Shikishima has 508s, or vice versa.
Let me pull it up here. The artillery is 510. So Shikishima is basically a Yamato with 510s, because Yamato has the 460s on it or whatever. And so she's a 6-gun battleship, big slappy shells. Of course, they make a special sound when you're in there. I think she looks pretty good too. In fact, let me pull her up here and put her on the screen. I think she looks pretty good. I like this camouflage on it. It's a 6-gun battleship with big guns. And that's kind of the whole trick here. She still has the armor frailties that we have with Yamato and ships like that, Musashi as well. And so she's got some of that same Japanese weakness. Her anti-aircraft defense is fine, but not spectacular. And so she's sort of like, do you want more Yamato? You can get some more Yamato over here, right? And then after Shiki came out was when we started seeing the super ships come out. And so the conversation we have with this ship typically is Shikishima, Satsuma, Yamato, of those kind of ships, like which one do you wind up thinking is the most interesting, or the one that you should spend your time trying to get? Would you spend your steel on this, or would you get one of those tech tree options? Because Yamato and Satsuma are both tech tree options, and they are pretty darn good in and of themselves. I feel like it'd be really difficult for me to spend my steel on Shikishima, and I haven't yet, because I feel like there's tech line alternates that are available that are just as good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I've been
I don't know.
I've been all over the place if you go back through historically on these videos or these conversations we've had about my opinions on Shikishima. I've
Mhm.
been riled before where I thought, what's the point? Like I bought this for steel and then they put out the Satsuma and it has the same guns but more of them.
Right.
Obviously, it's a super ship as opposed to a tier 10, so there's different variations in when that's available to use. But for
Right.
the most part, we have a lot of this conversation is for your viewership, um, which I feel is kind of like people who play randoms, like just normal players. Like it's
Yeah.
we're not talking to nobody wants to hear what we have to say if they're like really good or like amazing like ranked
If
players that are doing crazy stuff like whatever, like we're probably not the guy they're going to hang out and listen to. But if you're like Joe Public and you like playing World of Warships, like what do you really gain between buying this over having Yamato, or if you have Yamato and then can get Satsuma and you want to play a super ship, right? Because that was what I was really agitated me, was that Satsuma got these guns. When they first came up with
yeah.
the Satsuma and the Hanover, and they put those in that special mode where we had the ships, and then eventually they became a thing. But it really, to me, diminished what you get with Shikishima. Now, I have had some opinion change on that over time, mostly because I finally had some games in my Shikishima where it was really good. Like I mentioned earlier, my PR was in Malta now, right?
Mhm.
Like my PR before that was in Shikishima, strangely. And I don't like 6-gun battleships. The things about that I like about Shikishima, maybe overplaying even Yamato, which I don't play Yamato a ton. I don't play either of these ships a ton, but I do like that Shikishima has a lower base reload, even though I'm firing less shells. It should have a lower base reload.
Yeah. Yeah. To help
And
balance
but
out
I'm
its
firing less
output.
shells.
Yeah.
But Shikishima is more accurate, and people think about Yamato. Yamato and Satsuma have very similar accuracy, and Satsuma's accuracy is only improved by its gimmick, right? If you get its F key gimmick, and that makes it super accurate. But Shikishima out of the box has smaller horizontal dispersion. It has smaller vertical dispersion. Its AP shell, or its main battery, actually the shells have better flight time than they do on Yamato.
Mhm.
The flight time's the same on Satsuma because they're using basically the same guns and the same shells on Satsuma. But if you're just looking at Yamato versus Shikishima, what you're giving up in shell and total alpha hit, right? Because you're picking up some accuracy, and you're picking up some reload, and you're picking up a faster moving shell. And so, like, if you're looking at statistically on those batteries, like when you're talking about like what's the the DPMs and stuff.
Yeah.
The AP DPM on the Yamato is 266,000 and change. The AP DPM on Shikishima is 258,000, and so you're not getting a huge fall off there. If you could just do the math, if all this was about was like, this is the math of things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so where it feels bad is 6 shells versus 9 shells. Or
Right.
if you're bow in, 6 shells versus 4 shells, which is when it really feels bad to be in a 6-gun battleship, in my opinion. But
Well, and
the
that's when you
Go
splash a
ahead.
shell. Just a quick interjection. When you splash a Shiki shell, this is what you're talking about, right? It's a bigger portion. It's a bigger percentage of that 258,000 than if you
Mhm.
splash one Yamato shell, right? So if you hit with
Yep.
8, you're getting 8/9 of your damage, assuming all shells do the same damage, which they don't. We know that. But and if you hit with 5 out of 6 out of Shiki, you're getting 5/6 of your damage, as it were, right? And so that splash of each individual shell just costs you more, just looking at it from purely a math perspective. And that is the challenge with those 6-gun battleships. But you were talking about the accuracy, right? The dispersion is
Yeah.
better, the reload is better, and that's part of how you can keep that damage number up, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And are they extremely better? No, but they are
Right, right.
better. And then there's other stuff about Shikishima that's just different. I mean, if you look at Shikishima, it has a different set of secondaries and a different set of AA guns compared to Yamato. Out of those 3 ships between Shikishima, Yamato, and Satsuma, Shikishima has the highest AA strength number. Now,
Right.
we don't know. I don't think we have a strong handle on where AA strength comes from, but because it all feels kind of fake. But um, Yamato has a pretty low AA strength comparatively.
Yeah.
Yamato has like no mid or mid-range AA, whereas Shikishima does. Shikishima has much better long-range DPS. In fact, Shikishima's AA is way better than Satsuma's as well. Shikishima puts out a lot more flak, and a lot of that's probably because Shikishima's got all these 100mm Haragumo or Kitakame or Kitakaze turrets that are on it for secondaries that those other ships don't necessarily have. And so at one point in time, yeah, all those guys right there. And so at one point in time, people used to be like, well, you can build a secondary Shikishima for the memes. And you could, and then that kind of became not a thing after it kept rework.
Dostal just mentioned that in chat, and I was going to bring it up if you didn't. Go ahead.
Yeah, they don't have the accuracy really to do that. In reality, even with the build, it's funny. I mean, like it's funny, and yeah. but the hitting DPM isn't really there. Like if you when you try hitting DPM on Shikishima secondaries at like 8 kilometers is like 47,000. What's the hitting DPM on Michelangelo's secondaries? 600,000. Right.
The hitting DPM is like it's almost 100k at 10 or 12 kilometers, right? So it's like way better, and it's so you could do it because it's fun. We like fireworks, but it's not necessarily effective.
Yeah. But as far as like realistic play stuff, I think the AA, AA always feels like weak, but AA is better on Shikishima. So what you're looking at, like, why would I get this over Yamato? The sound effect, the guns that have more innate overmatch, only a few more millimeters, but more innate overmatch. They are a little bit more accurate if you're good with the aiming on the other things. I really like Yamato. I'm a big IJN stan. Like, why when you're looking for reasons, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Better AA, but this isn't a ship that like. I don't think this ship like breaks into like clan battles like over Yamato. Like, and Yamato's not a hugely popular clan battle selection anymore, but I don't see this ship doing that either. The additional overmatch isn't that big of a deal.
Right.
And so this ship is this is kind of like a side grade.
Like you said, it's more Yamato, right? If you like Yamato, but you want a little different flavor, I think that's good. And there are people who are strong Yamato fans. You mentioned clan battles, right? We don't see Yamatos very often, but we never see Shikishima in there. Right. So Yamato does show up on occasion. You're like, oh, somebody brought Yami, neat. But it's a special day if somebody brings a Shikishima into clan battles, right? So you don't see it too often. We had a comment earlier from Elder Artist as well, who said we were talking about the camos and stuff, or the sounds of the guns. He said, by the way, public service announcement: when you change the camo, sometimes it changes the gun sound as well. So bear that in mind. I haven't experienced that because, again, I don't have the ship on my main account, just on my press account, and so I haven't played it a ton. But if the sound is why you're getting this ship, you might need to run the base camo on there or experiment with some of your camos to see if it goes with it.
Yeah, I can't remember what that happened with. If it was like the steel camo or one of those things. If you laid, there's not a whole lot of people.
If it was a steel
there's not a whole lot of folks. It was a thing I remember from test.
I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
I don't remember the specifics of it. I wouldn't. When something like these steel ships that come with a permanent camo, I never really change them. Like,
and ideally, I mean, if
you're putting something ugly on it for funsies.
To be fair, if the whole reason you're buying this ship, or is the sound, maybe. I don't know. That's not the strongest argument for me to get a ship. You should get a ship because it's fun to play and because you enjoy to play.
You get the same sound off Satsuma and it didn't cost steel. And you get the
same sound off of Sats, exactly. So there's some choices there. But yeah, well, it's interesting to hear kind of the shift in your thoughts about Shiki this time around, right? Because I kind of stuck with the party line, which was, I don't know why I would get because I haven't gotten it on my personal account yet. I don't know why I would get it. I've got Yamato, and it's pretty good. And if I decide to get Satsuma, then I'll be fine there. Shiki would just be yet another one of those, but I like that you've kind of taken the other angle and talked about the reload and the dispersion and some of the
it's just again, I don't like, I agree with you. I still, and my previous stance is like, if I'm new to the world of steel ships, it's not a ship I'm going to go gravitate towards, because I really think that the thing that made this unique, in my opinion, was those guns. Then they removed that by the inception of Satsuma, right? So it's like, I assume what'll happen, and I know forethought, we haven't seen anything announced yet, but wait until there's a tier 11 St. Vincent and it gets the guns off Incomparable. I only can see that that's going to happen. And then
Gosh,
I would
yeah.
have the same argument for why Incomparable. Like,
Right.
and honestly, you could have that argument now. Well, we're not talking about Incomparable yet, but anyway, you know, it's just like I just feel like Shikishima's claim to fame kind of got stolen from it that way. Plus, the Satsuma's got 8 guns, so you have more bites at the apple.
Yeah. So anyway, Shikishima, I think we can leave the discussion at that for Shiki. Again, I think an interesting boat for people, like I think you said it best when you said, for folks who are Japanese battleship fans and you want another one, this is another one. It does bring a couple of different things to the table that aren't exactly found in that exact combination on other ships, but it's just more Japanese battleship, and sometimes you just want more of the same thing. I was so excited to get Lazo B this year when again, I already like Lazo. I don't need another Lazo, but Lazo B. So if that's what you're about, then Shiki might just be for you. So
yeah, if you're a Japanese battleship fan and you don't want another tier 9 Japanese battleship, here's a tier 10 one.
Yeah, exactly. Skada, do you want to walk us through Mecklenburg? This is one that's I'm kind of interested in Mecklenburg. It might be one of my next steel ships.
Yeah, you'd like Mecklenburg. The Mecklenburg is obviously popular with wereaboos everywhere. It's a tier 10 German battleship. Mecklenburg's a little bit of a gimmick. It's a Frederick de Grosse hull, so it's not a Kurfürst hull. It's a tier 9 hull, and then it has 16 guns, of which are 305 millimeter. They're the kind of guns that you find on like Brandenburg or
Odin
or Aegir, and mechanically, they may not be exactly the same shells and stuff. I don't remember, but it's that size of a gun, and with 16 guns with a relatively snappy reload. That's the nice thing about it, is that even with all those guns, the base reload's 26 seconds. And so you with reload in slot 6, you get that reload down, 22, 23 seconds in that ballpark, off the top of my head. And so like you're shooting a lot of shells. It also has a lot of range base for a German battleship. The guns are accurate. I can't remember if it has like battle cruiser math or not, but it's got really good accuracy. And it's played, the downsides of that is that the rear turret angles suck, but it is a lot of fun to play in that way. And what you'll see, you crazily will see in randoms where things that you don't expect, which is like a German battleship player getting like an arsonist, because you fire a lot of HE with this ship. You get crazy German quarter pen with that 305 HE, and you get these huge HE slaps on people, and you get fires and stuff because there's so much shell volume. Other things about Mecklenburg. Mecklenburg has 6-kilometer torpedoes, like Raleigh torpedoes. It does not have hydros.
That's actually,
it does have
interesting.
A bunch of secondaries.
Yeah,
lack of hydros. It has torpedoes, 6 km torpedoes. It has a secondary package. I think all the secondaries are like 128s though, so that's more like Kurfürst.
They are all 128s. Yeah, 12 by 2 128s. Yes.
So you wouldn't. It's not like one where if you were inclined to play it as a secondary brawler, you wouldn't really want to run IFHE. That said, I've always felt like the torpedoes and secondaries are fool's gold on this, and you shouldn't really build into secondaries on it.
The torpedoes they're 6-kilometer torpedoes.
Yeah,
okay.
classic normal German battleship, 6 km.
Yeah, the hitting DPM is not there, right? At 8 kilometers, Schroeder out DPMs it for secondaries. So does Preußen, right? In terms of hitting DPM. Hitting DPM is a measure that they use on the website shiptool.st, and it basically says, for this circular arbitrary target at a distance, how many of the secondaries are actually going to hit the target. And so it's a really great metric to understand how well your secondaries are actually going to perform in a real scenario, rather than just looking at the total DPM, which of course total DPM is a lot of that's going to splash in the water. Some of it's on the wrong side of the ship, stuff like that.
And so I think Mech's really interesting. The other thing I think is kind of interesting about Mecklenburg is that it has another thing that people don't expect is it has really good AA, and it has defensive AA as a consumable. And you'll find a lot of like not CV mains that will want to attack you, that you shred their planes, because it actually has really good AA, which is like a weird thing for a German battleship. So it's like this weird little contradiction at tier 10 of things that seem not like the rest. In this way, it's not like a Kurfürst, or it's not like a Preußen, or it's not, you know what I mean? Like it's
kind
got
of
a
its own
bunch of
thing.
different stuff on it. Yeah, it's its own thing.
What are you guys? We're part of it. What's interesting is I'm just watching chat over here because like we're talking about FDR and people made some comments initially, and then we talked about Shiki, people, a couple of comments, and now we're talking about Mecklenburg, and chat has kind of lit up, right? So people are talking about Mecklenburg over here, and that kind of speaks to its popularity, excuse me. A couple of comments, like Jimbo says, I like the ship. Hoghammer says Mecklenburg is crazy fun to play. Profile says it's a German Illinois sort of, which is kind of funny. Like it's not exactly like the Illinois recipe, but it's got a lot of guns, and it can do a lot of that HE spamming, and in the right conditions it can use its AP pretty well. You mentioned the lack of hydros, right, which is something that we've got a lot of German BBs now that don't have hydros. Brandenburg, this one, Tirpitz, there's a number of those in the upper tiers that don't have hydros. Obviously your mid tiers, your lower tiers won't have them necessarily. And so we're getting more used to the concept of a hydroless German BB as a community. In fact, it's probably only crusty old timers like me who are talking about how no, German BBs are supposed to have hydros, even though Tirpitz didn't back in 2015 or whatever. But so she does have a couple of those things that make her a little bit different. The FDG hull is fine but very burnable. So she has a couple of weaknesses and stuff, but I think the 16305 sounded like an interesting proposition, and I've hovered over the purchase button on this one at least twice, and I haven't done it. We will probably be seeing this one jump into my port relatively soon. I'm hoping to be able to afford it after the Salvage for Victory event. So we'll see. Mech's cool, and I like a battleship with smaller guns that shoot more often, because like you said when we were talking about FDR, nobody likes to wait to click the attack button. We just want to click it right now. And can I click it? When can I click it? Can I click it soon? Can I click it now? And Mecklenburg answers the call there and lets you do that a little more frequently, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean the AP, you're not gonna like get huge. I mean the AP is fine. You get a lot of shells. You can still get really good hits on battleship sides with the AP. Maybe you're aiming a little more upper belt and waterline than you would with like a Kurfürst or a Preußen. But the HE is really good on those big ships and is totally usable. And then against cruisers, there's always the thing I like with battleships with more of a cruiser caliber gun is I'm less inclined to get just overpinned to death. Like when I fire all those guns at a cruiser, I'm probably going to get some citadels and not just get overpins like I would with bigger battleship guns anymore. Like bigger battleship guns are all about shooting like angled cruisers and overmatching them and doing that whole thing. And it feels really bad when you shoot like a broadside cruiser. Like I should be able to punish this guy because he's broadside, and you get a bunch of overpins and misses. And the guns on this are way more accurate. The Sigmas, 2.05, and it's just they're more accurate than other German tier 10 battleships. And you've got way more shells if you're exposing all of your guns to use. And because they're 305s, you're probably going to get citadels on cruisers and not get as many overpins, which feels good. This ship's a lot of fun, and I think this ship's the one that you see played. People get this ship and they play it. It's definitely got its place in randoms and stuff. And I think as far as like the success of steel ships goes, I think this was probably a pretty successful release for Wargaming.
A steel bestseller, if you will. And yeah, she's got more hit points than Schlieffen, more hit points than Pommern, more hit points than Prinz Ruprecht and Freddy, actually. So she's got some health that she brings to the table there, which is good. Which is something you might not have thought, right, when you're thinking about how this thing stacks up against some of those other ships. 85K is a pretty good number, which we're pleased about. And then 32.5 knots. Looking at all of the tier 9 and tier 10 German battleships, she's the second fastest one, right behind Schlieffen. So she's got some speed, which for a lot of these smaller gun battleships, that maneuverability is part of the recipe, right? So that you can get the appropriate angles, so that you can tangle with things that have bigger guns than you, that kind of stuff. So I like those two attributes of this ship too. So and I think you said it best. You see this boat, it's out there, it's still out there, even though it's been out for over a year. And it's kind of proven to be a good seller for folks who are at least playing in randoms and stuff, right? We haven't seen a lot of Mecklenburgs in clan battles. She's not really for that, but she's probably pretty fun in the other modes where we do see her and things like that for most players. Anyway, that's Mecklenburg. And next we are going to talk about Incomparable. Did you talk about Mecklenburg? I can start with Incomparable. Incomparable won the Best Steel Ship of 2022 award at last year's Golden Barnacles, which was pretty cool. The British really swept the awards last year, and Incomp managed to step up and do that. So talking a bit about this ship, she is a British battleship, 6-gun ship. Let me bring it up here and we'll put it on the screen for you guys. She's a 6-gun British battleship with 508s, and the guns look cartoonishly long and cartoonishly large. This is kind of one of those ships that has come out and again, very popular, won the Best Steel Ship award against whatever else was out that year, which wasn't a long list. But what's interesting about Incomparable, I think, for this discussion is kind of its comparison against St. Vincent. St. Vincent has 457s. This has 508s. St. Vincent has a lot of the tricks that Incomparable has, but in the tech line, and she's very, very well known and very, very popular. I want to throw a question to you, Skada, which is, we see St. Vincent in competitive in like clan battles and things. How come we don't see Incomparable? Like, what are the differences maybe between the two ships?
I think it's squishier. I think it doesn't have the survivability is part of the problem. It has less base hit points by 10,000 almost, right? Like St. Vincent has 79,000 hit points, and Incomparable only has 70,000. A lot of and I think it's funny, we talk about how this won Best New Steel Ship last year, and I don't think if you had a vote on that again it would. I almost feel like this is one of those, like with the Oscars situation, where it was swept up in the fervor over other stuff, right? So when we did the awards last year, the St. Vincent, the British battlecruiser tech tree, won the best new tech tree of that year, and Incomparable got swept up in that. I feel like Incomparable is one of those ships that's like a precursor we talk about a lot in different content. We talk about these precursors, these progenitors, where it's like Wargaming has an idea for something that might work, so they put out a premium or a steel ship or a coal ship, and then a period of time later a tech line comes out that it seems like it's kind of like, well, we took what we learned from that and it became a tech line.
Yeah.
Incomparable,
this definitely came out ahead of St. Vincent, and then we got this whole line of ships that are like that, but kind of like perfected in a way. Yeah, and so when you the way you play them, right, with St. Vincent's got that weird turret layout, but that allows you to have the ship in a certain way as opposed to Incomparable's more normal turret layout. Right.
You're talking, speeds between the two is similar. A lot of the performance characteristics are similar, but Incomparable has got to be longer. It's so big. Incomparable is like right up there with like Dyson and the Japanese ships for like crazy length of ship.
It is. It's 22 meters longer, 302 versus 280.
Yeah, and in comp, worst turning radiuses, stuff like torpedo protection on it, I'm looking at the stats, is worse than St. Vincent. And so this is one where if you have them both, like, and I struggle at this point to be like, do I want to use St. Vincent over, would I want to use Incomparable over St. Vincent? In competitive, you don't. Like it's like you're taking Incomp, like, or don't you have St. Vincent kind of conversation, right? In randoms, hey, whatever, it's randoms, but
well,
it's just kind of funny to me how I think St. Vincent, if you like really are like looking at them particularly, is probably a better ship.
Yeah, you talked about how Incomparable is stealthier than St. Vincent, and she is, and that's a nice thing. St. Vincent is not stealthy though, right? If you build for it, it can be pretty stealthy. And then another reason that St. Vincent is pretty powerful, both of these ships have a super heal. St. Vincent has, for at least base, before you put commanders and choose superintendent, things like that, she's got 3 charges, whereas Incomparable only has 2. So that stealth and that tankiness, or that recovery of damage, when Wargaming is playing they're playing the shell game of designing a ship, stealth is part of survivability for them, because it is, and so is repair, so is hit points, so is armor. And so you can see this ship, blessed a little bit with stealth, and then not so blessed with as much healing as we see with St. Vincent. Both of them can heal a lot, but St. Vincent can heal more.
Yeah, and then when you're just talking about like general usability, like Incomparable's base range is really short. It's 17.5. St. Vincent's is a lot better at 20.5, right? And you make up for that with on Incomparable by having a spotter, but why would I need a spotter if I just have better base range, right? You're talking a 6-gun battleship versus a 9-gun battleship. I know you're talking of a difference between 457s and 508s, but like, man, if you look at the actual mechanical like DPM and stats, St. Vincent's just better. This is one where the Sigma on St. Vincent is worse, where Incomparable is more accurate in that regard. But you feel that difference with the 6 guns versus the 9 guns a lot, I think, in between the two. And Incomparable isn't as good of an HE spammer. I used to call St. Vincent when we were playing it when it was new. We have the gimmick on the channel of the pizza party, right? And I used to joke that St. Vincent wasn't a pizza party, that was a pizza oven, because all she did was bake pizzas all day long.
I remember
You just go out on St. Vincent, and it was so easy for me at my skill level to easily get 100,000 damage in that ship in a random. It's just so easy. Rocking fires on people, you big AP hits, because those guns are, they're it's like the Thunderer guns, right? And so Thunder's a little more accurate, but it's a comfortable armament and it works really well. And so I think that is a place where Incomparable has suffered over time in comparison when we see this kind of thing happen, where a steel ship comes out and has a certain kind of thing that it does, and then a tech line ship comes out and it seems almost like the version 2. And this is one really where I think St. Vincent as a version 2 it's just got a lot more pluses. I know Incomparable has hydros. Incomparable has more traditional torpedoes, where the torpedoes kind of fan out from the hips, and they're not these weird forward firing torpedoes like St. Vincent has. But yeah, it's kind of a bummer. And I think if you revoted that best steel ship award again, I just don't think Incomparable beats Mecklenburg in that comparison if you did it today.
I'm trying to remember the other ships that were in that category. I can certainly look it up. Maybe I'll do that afterwards. But I was surprised Incomparable won. I remember I didn't vote for it. The judge is telling you who he voted for. One of the judges, anyway. I didn't vote for it myself. But I was surprised to see it win. In fact, I think we had 10 awards last year. 5 of them went to British ships, which was kind of special. I've got the list here. I decided to look it up anyway. Hang on. Steel ship. It was Vallejo versus Mecklenburg, which I misspelled, unfortunately, in the form that I sent to the judges, and Incomparable. And I'm surprised. I thought it was going to be Mecklenburg. I don't remember if I voted for Mecklenburg, but I remember thinking that Mecklenburg was going to win. And yeah, I am surprised, because Mecklenburg, like we just said a minute ago, Mecklenburg still gets played a lot, and you don't really see Incomparable taking the field as often as you did in the past. And I think St. Vincent's success has something to do with that. It's overshadowed Incomparable. Somebody in chat a minute ago just mentioned Stealth Assassin. I think it was Betaflex there. Just said, certainly seemed like Incomp's more gimmicky about being a Stealth Assassin, assuming the 508s won't overpen, while St. Vinny trades overmatch for stealth and better sustained combat capability. That's a pretty good summary, I think, based on the things we've been talking through today for Incomparable. She's out there. I think if you're a big British ship fan, if you like the idea of popping up and being like, surprise, 508s, you can certainly do that with Incomp. And she's available. I think if you're a person who's looking to buy your first steel ship and you're maybe halfway or 2/3 of the way towards St. Vincent, just finish the St. Vinny line and pick something that's going to give you a little bit more variety. You can come back and get Incomparable at a later date, but it's not going to bring something super unique to your line if you have the entire line of British battle cruisers in your port already. That'd be kind of my final thoughts on this one. Anything else on Incomparable? If not,
I liked it. I liked the idea of it when I got it, but out of the, Thunder, Conquer, St. Vincent, and Incomparable lineup of Tier 10 British battleships, it's fourth for me, and ones that I would pick to play if we went to do a random right now.
Yeah,
and that's kind of a bummer. That's kind of a bummer when you have paid steel for it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we, encourage folks to do the research, not just this show. Again, we're pretty average players talking from a pretty average perspective about random battles largely, and a little bit about, gold and gale, storm and gale level clan battles. But, do your research. It's a big purchase because of how long it takes to get steel. Next up is Bourgogne, Skada. You want to start us off with that sweet Bourgogne?
No, you should do this one because you, come on.
All right, I'll do it. I like the Bourgogne. I like the Bourgogne. Everybody likes the Bourgogne. Bourgogne is fantastic. This is a really fun ship to play. You, of course, Scott, you had it before I did and told me that I would like it. And I didn't believe you. Nobody believes me when I tell them they would like it either. So I understand now what you experienced. This is a battleship for everybody. I think that it's true that battleship mains like this ship. And I know that it's true that people I know who prefer other classes have really said, this is like my favorite battleship. And it's partly because Bourgogne can do some things like a battleship really, really, really well, and some things like a battle cruiser or even a cruiser or something else really, really well. It's got a reload booster. The guns are only 380 millimeters, but they tend to hit what you click on. They don't tend to overpen. That's one thing that you bring up a lot, which I think is true of this ship. They don't tend to overpen too much. And of course, when you can hit that reload booster and hit them again, you can do that. I just enjoy this ship because it's maneuverable. It shoots frequently. It shoots well. It just works. I can't even lay my finger on this is the reason Bourgogne is broken, other than to say that she's just great. And I'm so glad that the ship has maintained its current status and everything. This is an old ship, Skada. This ship's been around for a long time, and it is still usually one of my number one recommendations to people if they're looking to get their first steel ship. I'll throw it to you. I said a bunch of stuff. I don't even think I did a good job of talking, but I figured I'd start it off.
Bourgogne was my first steel ship. I remember back then there was less options, and I think in our clan everybody already had Stalingrad, and it was like, well, we all have Stalingrad. It was kind of like a foregone conclusion. You got to get Stalingrad. It's best we get Stalingrad first. But I loved that line. I loved playing through that line back then, and I really liked Alsace at tier 9 in the French line. And I don't like Republique very much. Yeah. Because it feels like, why is this here? It doesn't this is in the French battleship line is one that I'm surprised they haven't rejiggered at this point, because it's got a lot of it's this, it's that. You don't have a lot of uniformity as you move through that line. Stuff changes a lot, right? You go from Lion to Richelieu to Alsace, and it's these weird changes. But anyway, what Bourgogne is it's the Alsace, the tier 9 Alsace, at tier 10 with main battery reload booster and accurate guns. And a lot of old timers will say, well, that's a pre-nerf Alsace. Because it kind of is, right, with the addition of main battery reload booster, but the gun accuracy is a pre-nerf Alsace situation, right? So it has, this has, it's not a ton of hit points, but it does have, and you're look at the armor and you're well, it doesn't got a ton of armor. It's a French battleship, 32 millimeter armor. It could overmatch this, that, and the other thing. But yep. But there's a lot of magic in the French battleships that are there for players in the know, right? There's weird that you hear about black hole armor where shells go into those ships and they don't go any, you get weird pens that are where did it go? What happened? Why didn't I kill that guy? The armor works well on them. Then the guns with the 380s, the French 380s, and this with the accuracy of them and having the salvo weight that you have, but the shell velocity makes the gun so usable. And we talk about this a lot with new players. When new players ask us, what cruisers should I play first? A lot of times I say, well, you should play the Russian cruisers first, because you point and click and the shells go where you want. You don't have to think as much. about shell arcs and drag and how long it takes for a shell to get somewhere. And you get that with this ship, right? The shells move, they get out of their own way quickly, and they get to where you want. It's not Slava fast, but the shells on this work really well. The 380s work fine. Like you get big hits on cruisers. A couple seasons ago, I used this ship a lot in clan battles because it has great range, and I would just dial up these long range shots with it and get big smashing hits on stuff like Moskva and Des Moines, where you get into a position, which is what this ship does well. It's fast and relatively stealthy, and you can get to the sides of things, and you can get to flanks in it, and you can incur big damage. And if you find yourself in a random in the ship and you can't play it that way and you have to play more midfield, fine, spam HE. It does that great too. You can just play this like a conqueror if you want, and spam HE and get fires, and if people put them out, use the main battery reload booster to put them right back and pretend you're playing a Henry. It's great. This ship's a ton of fun. I'm sure I've never had like a monster damage game in it. I know you have. Our friend Eraser, friend of the show and clan member, he's not a battleship player, and he talks about how he loves this ship. 300,000 damage games in this ship, right? Everybody who plays this ship, I think, finds this ship to be eminently usable and a lot of fun.
And it's weird because you have to convince people to try it. You had to convince me. I had to convince Eraser. I didn't specifically convince Eraser, but people did. And then Razor comes back and he's like, it's my favorite battleship. It's the freaking greatest boat I've ever played. And I'm like, it's amazing. Everybody comes back with the same story. It's really delightful.
And it's from 2018.
It's old as hell.
It's like the oldest steel ship, but it still works really well. And you can. GMAC mentions secondaries, right? If you this is a boat where I wouldn't necessarily build it for secondaries if I was playing randoms or competitive in it, but if you want to build it for secondaries as if you play a lot of ASIMs or co-ops and things like that, sure, go nuts. It'll light a lot of fires with those too, and the range is great. That's the thing with all French battleships. They all have kind of like silly long range secondaries if you build into them that don't really pen anything but light a lot of fires, and it's kind of a fun fireworks show. It's good for that too. But you've written a damn music video jingle or a commercial about this ship, right? And so it's just a fun ship. And I think most folks would say, like, hey, if you play out of the battleships available for steel, this to me has to be like the one you go get first, right?
It has to be. And it's weird because, we live in this big gun meta in World of Warships where everyone's like, well, you got to have something with 457s or whatever. And yes, that's true, but I can't speak to why this boat works so well. I think part of it is that you can capitalize on more opportunities more frequently. Not only the reload booster, but the speed, the ability to put yourself in a position where we could put pressure on enemy ships. You were talking about how your high damage watermark recently happened in Malta for you. My recent highest game ever happened to me in Bourgogne. It was a loss, and I can't remember what it was. It was over 200k, 230 maybe. I should look it up, but and it was just because everywhere I looked, my guns were reloaded and I was ready to shoot something. Bourgogne can do that for you, and she's maneuverable. She's fast. I mean, she has a combination of things that is rare and is special and works better than it looks like it would work on paper. Because you look at those 380s and you go, oh man, I'm going to bounce more shells than I do in my Montana, which has 406s. Or I'm not going to be able to punch through things like I can with my 457s, and that's kind of true, but you get to try again and again and again. And the same way that lighter cruisers have higher DPM than heavier cruisers and can sometimes put up monster damage games, you can do the same thing kind of on a different scale with Bourgogne, and really be where you want to be because of the speed, and hit what you want to hit because you can shoot at everything, and you won't, your thing that you bring up frequently, and I already mentioned it, was the lack of overpens. You get less overpens, fewer overpens with this ship than you will with something with 508s or 457s. It really, this is the best battleship in the steel store, end of story, I think. But
yeah, we don't tend to do ratings on these, but for me,
but for this ship I will.
Like for these battleships, it's easy in my head to do like a 1 to 5 on order of which I would get. And that I did buy this one first, and it, at the time, I don't remember what else was really available in the steel store at the time. I'm gonna say it was like obviously Stalingrad, because it came out a couple months before. Those ships are both from 2018. I don't know what else would have been available. I'm looking at the release dates on this. Maybe Shikishima and FDR were both in the Steel Store already at the time. But it was an easy choice for me as somebody who loved playing the French battleships, and I really liked playing Alsace. I just liked the way it felt, and it was like, wow, here's an Alsace that works better.
Yes.
And I had no problem with that. And honestly, if you look at like the design language on the Patrie, like the Tier 10 or the Tier 11 French ship, you know, it's kind of more like, it kind of has more like this layout.
Yeah, it does.
But with like Republique's rifles, right? So it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of, and I've had, and I'm not a huge Patrie fan because it's so big, but this ship to me is just like this is, you know, even in my list of like all Tier 10s and Tier 10 battleships, this ship's really high on that list of things I just enjoy playing. And so yeah, I highly recommend this one if you're a battleship player and you're going to get a steel battleship, unless you're just not a, and you know, you look at it now and you're like, oh, like 380s, 75,000 hit points,
right.
But it's the most fun of all these ships in my opinion. Mecklenburg's a close second though, for me. Like, and that's funny when you think about the things, but you're talking about, again, a bunch of shells, a bunch of smaller shells, and the way that they work, and you know, just kind of
I just
boathy thing.
Yeah, I just pulled Patrie up, right, and showed it does not have the reload booster. It does have the speed boost, and it does look very similar to this boat. I like Patrie well enough. It's a pretty good super ship. I don't think it's Bourgogne fun, but I think it's a pretty good super ship. So is it a replacement for this? Not exactly.
No,
but if you like this, you might like it like I do, and you might dislike it or not like it like Skada does it, you know. So
yeah, I just don't like Republique for whatever reason. I've never had a fun time in Republique. And so comparatively between this, it's like, oh, this is what I want. Like,
this is what I thought I was going to get.
This feels like, I'll say, and I get to Republique and it's 2 turrets, and it's like, why am I playing this Tier 10 Gascon? And like, what's the benefit? And Republique has great reload and all that, and there's plenty of people that love Republique. It's just not for me.
Right.
I've you know, if you take the breaking out French battleships between like Republique and like Gascon and Champagne and that kind of turret layout, and then you know. Bourgogne also follows in the line of like Jean Bar, right? Like the former coal ship, but now exclusively black ship, right? Is the, you know, Jean Bar is a Richelieu, Tier 8 Richelieu, but a Tier 9 with main battery reload booster and some other, you know, improvements like, you know, and stuff. And this is that. Let's take Alsace and make it a Tier 10, but with main battery reload booster and some other improvements. And that works fine for me. Like that design language works fine for me on these French battleships.
I've been thinking a lot for like a year ago or a year and a half ago. I was like, I need to make a video that explains what the crap is going on with all these French battleships, because they have all these wacky different gun layouts, and all, like there's like 5 premium Tier 8s and a tech, you know, like it's not 5, but it's, you know, Flandre and
no, these are Flandre,
Champagne, and
newly joined by
Picardy, and there's the Tech Line one that you just mentioned that for some reason his name is escaping me, Richelieu. So like there are, I guess, 5 altogether now that we have Picardy, but like it's just like that Tier 8 in particular is chaotic. But even things like this versus Republique versus the Alsace and everything is the design language is all over the place with these French ships. That's not what this video is about, or this stream is about, but it's a thing that's been percolating in the back of my mind for a very long time. Long story short, though, Scott and I are big fans of Bourgogne. I think if you get this steel ship, you won't be sad that you did. Get it with a coupon. Like you should get all your steel ships with a coupon as long as you have one available. And so I think we can probably move on.
And look at the deal that is cheaper than the other ones, right? It's only 30,000 steel. What a deal!
Doesn't make any sense. I mean, again, I think it comes down to age is my best guess at this point. But
if they repriced all these steel ships based on like some other metric,
based on
I think
excellence,
it would be it would be interesting to me to see if like they actually were like, you know, nobody buys this one, so let's make it cheaper, and this one's more popular, so let's make it cost more. Like
all of a sudden, Bourgogne is 45,000.
Like the real world, all of a sudden you're like, hey, wait, what?
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for letting me lead in on that one, and then we had kind of a weird, chaotic conversation about Bourgogne. Austin, tell us about Austin.
Tier 10 American super light cruiser. Austin is like Yeah, the easiest way to describe Austin used to be, it's like, well, have you played Atlanta? You know, it's that kind of design language, right? It's like a really light. It's lighter than a Worcester. You know, nowadays, since this ship was introduced, they put in the Pan Asian cruiser tech line that ends in the Xenon, and Xenon is like this same ship. It's like basically the same hull. It does not play the same way. But you know, if you've seen a Xenon, or you've maybe played Xenon and you're used to getting Citadel in a Xenon, this ship has some of the similar characteristics. The cool thing with Austin is that, and I might be wrong here, but I'll just take a stab at it. I think it was the first American ship that had SAP. I think this came out before
I think it came up before
Forrest
Sherman. Yeah, I think so.
And so it has SAP, as well as HE.
I think this one has HE, but I always confuse it with San Diego, so I'm going to check just to be sure. Yes, HE.
San Diego has AP. I actually I've certainly played San Diego more than I played Austin, but and then Austin's claim to fame is its crazy main battery reload booster that never runs out. Well, it has a timer, but you don't run out of them. So
you have
so
as
it's
many
not
charges
really
as you have life, as long as you're
not
alive.
in that way, it's not a consumable because you do not consume them. It's just it's on a timer, and you can only use it so many times in a match, which is really, like, I can't think of anything else that's like that other than, you know, damage control. Like, I don't think any other ship really has anything like that where they can just keep using it and fit them. But it's a neat thing that makes a ship crazy. All in all, good torpedoes that have good alpha and good range. I think, aren't they like the 9.2, or they're 10s?
Let me find it. Let me make sure. Yeah, 10.5.
I should know more. About these things before we talk about them. I just don't play this ship.
Stuff that you
don't play this ship.
Much.
You play this ship way more than me. I don't play this ship. So,
and way more is not a ton, but I do play it more than you. It's true. So yeah, 10.5s on the torpedoes. You talked about the reload booster, right? You have as many charges as you didn't die, right? So as long as you're still alive, it's like reloading, like you said. 75% main battery reload time on that, by the way. So it's not a 50% reload booster like most of them are. This makes you shoot now and now and now and now, and it's just hilarious when you're using it. I didn't know how funny this ship was going to be to play. When I first got it, it was when airship escort mode was a separate mode, and I went into a game with a friend of the show, Jimbo, and he was playing some German secondary battleship thing, and I was like, I'm going to take Austin because that seems like a mistake, and went out there and just melted a bunch of people with those reload boosters, and I couldn't stop laughing. And I've enjoyed the ship ever since, right? I like light cruiser play, and Austin is a light cruiser that's like a pissed off honey badger. It will bite you and bite you and bite you until you leave, right? Even though it's small and not as tough as some of the ships, you know, as we perceive them. But no, it's fun. 5-hull repairs in my build. It's got hydros, no radar, right? No radar at all. Good AA. So Austin is fun. You see a lot of people online saying Austin's a bad ship. And I think, you know, when somebody says this is a bad ship, that's a bad ship, you have to understand that there's a lot of different ways to play World of Warships. And in certain modes, Austin might not be the best ship. Like, I wouldn't take Austin to clan battles for reals. Sometimes when we're, you know, at the end of the night, we're like, you know what, let's just go to the Bravo rating and play something silly. I'll take Austin because I think it's funny. But I wouldn't take it in there to try to, you know, hold a cap or something. I don't think it's for that. And so I think we get a lot of messages where people say Austin's a bad ship because it's not good in COTS, or Austin's a bad ship because it's not good in clan battles, right? And that doesn't mean it's a bad ship. It means that it's not appropriate for the one use case that person is considering right now. So if you see that kind of advice, you know, ask questions of those people and try to understand where they're coming from. I think they have a point and it's worth talking about. But you'll see people tell you that Austin's a bad ship, and it's funny because I've seen it multiple times. Maybe I'm the only one who's had this experience. I just totally disagree. I think it's a really fun ship. It's just that it makes a lot more sense in something like random battles, right, where you can take up a difficult position to dislodge you from, and then you can make a mess of the enemy. We had a great game playing Austin the other day at the request of a viewer on stream, and it was tons of fun. And so definitely, you know what the ship is for before you dismiss it entirely, because one person with one sentence saying a ship is good or bad is usually not enough evidence for you to make the decision of buying a ship or not. And that goes for our advice too. You should definitely check more sources than just a couple of middle average players who are talking about what they think about boats. You'll certainly get our perspective, but
yeah, I have the ship and I haven't played it a ton, and I can kind of see where you probably have some people coming from where they're like, I don't think this is a good ship. There's a lot of content that's been made on this ship on YouTube. There's a lot of players, CCs, and the guys who make the kind of guys on YouTube that make gameplay videos or clip battles from Twitch and post them. And it's like, oh, I had a crazy game in Austin, and they're in a random and they do a massive amount of damage, and they have the right positioning all the time, and they're just trucking everybody with this thing. And it just looks like so much fun, and it looks like a ton of fun. And then you go buy this ship and you pretty quickly realize this is what we used to joke about. Like, well, like I can watch the Bulls of the 90s play basketball and think I'm going to go get me a basketball and a hoop and go to a park and throw down like Michael Jordan. And I'm not going to. I can't do that. I don't have the skill level of those people. And so while it's fun to watch people who are very good in a certain kind of ship excel in a certain kind of ship, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can. And so you kind of have to have an idea. And that's the hard thing with buying any steel ship, is that if you don't have an idea of how it's going to fit your playstyle before you get it, you buy it and then you're stuck with it. And I think a lot of people have that kind of story where they got a steel ship because maybe they thought it was the new hotness, or maybe it was something they saw somebody play and it looked like it'd be good, and then they just can never get it to work for them. I don't know that I've played Austin enough to even say that it never worked for me. It's just not a ship that I ever reach for.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ships in your port, right? I mean, like, you got a lot of ships to choose from.
But like, just generically, like if I look at the statistics on Austin, and I know Austin is built and balanced around that main battery reload booster.
Yes,
it has to be, right? But if you compare it to Worcester and Des Moines, like the base reload is just worse, and that's frustrating. The base range is just worse, and that's frustrating. Accuracy and dispersions on all three of those cruisers is very similar.
It was Worcester, Austin, and what was the third one?
Des Moines.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're just looking at something like just looking at the maths, right? Like shells per minute when you're not running the main battery reload booster on Austin is lower than Des Moines. It's exceptionally lower than Worcester, and nobody plays, like, you don't see people playing Worcester, which is probably too bad, because I think Worcester is actually kind of a cool platform and people just don't play it. But and you don't have, you've got SAP, which is really cool, and it's really good at smashing DDs, and it's really good at farming battleship superstructure. But there's some things about it that just aren't gonna gel for you. Like you really have to be like a superior positioning king, because it's not a ship that's going to give you a lot of opportunities to fail at positioning, just because of its hit point pool. Not that Worcester is better at that. Worcester has more hit points, but it's also very squishy. So you're getting SAP and you're getting torpedoes that you don't have on those other tech tree ships. You're better at AA than Des Moines, but not better than Worcester. You get gigged in the ASW department. We talk about this a little bit, but Austin has over the side ASW.
It does.
And the tech line ships have ASW airstrikes, right? And as you all well know, over the side ASW in a cruiser feels like a bad time. That's almost just like a stealth nerf, when there's a lot of ships that we've talked about that have stealth nerfs when ASW is put into play, and they can nerf Austin, right? It's a newer ship, they don't have to worry about that. But the over the side ASW is probably something Xenon has as well. I can't remember, maybe it doesn't. But overside ASW kind of sucks on a cruiser. That's just not a lot of fun. So that's kind of a thing. And so really you're balanced around the main battery reload booster, which, if you think back to any time you saw any content of anybody having a good time in the ship, it's the main battery reload boosters running, and they're just raining hell down on some poor GK, some guy that just bought GK for coal, and
they just watched our last video. They bought GK, and they're out there getting rained on.
Chad Chaddington from the EU server is just trucking some guy with this Austin and having a great time, right? And so just take it with a grain of salt. I think Austin's fine. Austin's fun. It just I don't know. It's just not super compelling to me.
Yeah, and I think that's a common sentiment. I think the light cruiser play in general is not for everyone. I think you do fine in light cruisers,
Hmm.
but I don't think that light cruiser play, first of all, is a turn off for a certain number of players, and then of course if you get past that, then you go, okay, great, now it's got no range, and I have to be always constantly worried about getting nuked because I'm up close and I'm in a light. There's a lot of reasons to not like a ship like Austin. The question is the reload booster, because you're right, that is the party piece, that's the thing that this ship does that's super special. Is that fun enough? Does that make you, as Jimbo said, I'm in it for the giggles, he just bought the ship today. Is that enough to make you go, yeah, this ship is fun for me? For me, it totally is. I totally understand people who would say no. I did want to catch a comment too. Elder Artist 73 said Austin was buffed recently. No? And I was like, wait, yes, wasn't it? And I looked it up. It was in 12.10, which is last patch. It had a main battery reload time reduction, so a buff of 0.5 seconds from 8 to 7.5 seconds. And then the reload booster now comes back 5 seconds faster as well. 125 was the old value, 120 is the new value, so 2 minutes.
And the stats I'm quoting from are current, right?
Yeah, you've got the current ones, yeah.
Its reload is still worse than, booster in Des Moines when you're not running the reload booster, and those rote DPM numbers, obviously, for when you really only can compare HE DPM between them, but it's not even in the same ballpark without that reload booster. I mean, Austin's HE DPM without the reload booster is 172,000, and Wooster's is 344,000. So it's just not in the same range. But that's not what you're playing Austin for. Right. You are playing it to surprise people with the sap in that reload booster and just truck them and then slink away, and that's really kind of how it's played, in my opinion. Well, I'm not saying don't get Austin, don't take this. I'm just trying to counterpoint on it, is that I think I just don't know that it's like, for me it's just like I'm not saying I wish I didn't have it, I wish I had the steel back, because I don't care. right. Like whatever, I don't care.
It's in your port now,
it's just like I just don't ever go like, I gotta get me an Austin game. It's just not something that I really care that much about. And I like San Diego, which is like a premium tier 8 version of this, if you will. Like basically it's got the reload booster and sap at tier 8 on a San Diego. I like that ship way better, and that probably has to do with like matchups.
I was going to ask if you could lay your finger on a reason why, but it could just be with the matchmaking for sure. Ships like Austin, torpedo focused ships, those are ships that are counting on plays to make their damage number, big plays, right? When you talk about a ship that reliably gets damage over time slowly, it's not exciting, but it's reliable. It's a workhorse. It goes out there and it does the job. I like to say it clocks in and it goes to work, and then at the end of the 2-week period it gets a paycheck, right? Whereas a ship like Austin, or something that's hoping to land a big salvo of torpedoes, or a 6-gun battleship that needs to hit this salvo or else, right, rather than something that has 16 guns like we talked about with Mecklenburg, those ships require big plays, and it comes down to skill and positioning. I mean, honestly, positioning is a skill, because the 7.5 second reload with Austin, I'll tell you, when your reload booster turns off, there's no sadder moment in the Austin captain's life than when the reload boosters stop shooting and you're like, is this what my life is now? I shoot every 7.5 seconds like some sort of schlub? This is terrible, because it is kind of terrible. But in that time, you're waiting for reload booster to come back, you're repositioning, and then you're hoping to do it again. And if you can't do it successfully a few times in the battle, then you're going to have a more mediocre match than if you can. And so you're absolutely right. You have to make those plays happen. And that's probably what it's really built around.
That's probably my life experience with it. Maybe why I'm less down on it is because you step out and somebody else steps out, and you do the Spider-Man meme, and then you're like, okay, you're getting the business now, other guy in let's say another cruiser, and you just unleash on them with this torrent of stuff. And if they don't die, and then life you're gets still hard, and then your reload sucks, and then you're like, oh no, I'm still here, and they're still here, and they can see me, and their friends can see me now, and that didn't work, and that feels like that's really like a downer. Like that feels like the end of the world. Like And that's when you realize, oh no, I don't have a lot of hit points and I'm in a thin light cruiser. And that other thing that's still alive is probably going to just beat me with base DPM being better. So that kind of sucks.
Yeah, it's tough. And no smoke, no way to hide. It doesn't bring those tricks to the party. Your friend is islands and the generosity of strangers leaving smoke for you, right? So anyway, that'll be let's call that the end of our Austin discussion. We can geek about that ship longer if we decide to, but I don't think we need to keep going. We've got another page of 6, and that is right here, Gato, the submarine Gato. Now I bought this ship this week, but I haven't played it yet. You've got a couple of battles in it. You have Gato in your port, I believe. So Skada, can you talk us through the submarine here a little bit?
Oh boy.
It's walk us through it.
I mean, as much as you and I play subs,
yeah,
Gato's Tier 10
American
American
too, obviously. But.
Yeah, Tier 10 American submarine, first steel submarine. Gato's claim to fame, I suppose, is that it has its torpedo package is really good in both ways. Its dumbfire torpedoes are like gearing torpedoes, so they go really far and they hit pretty hard, and they're not super fast, but they're fast enough. And its homing torpedoes, they don't go as far, but they go pretty far. And they home relatively well, and they also hit pretty good. Not as good as the dumbfires, which is pretty normal, but yeah. So Gato's concealment on the surface is similar to like a gearing. I think what is it like I-5s probably.
Yeah, it's in the 5s. I can get the real number.
It's relatively quick. I just can't speak to subs well enough to tell you like, oh, it's better underwater at this, that, and the other thing. I don't feel like this ship has anything special in that regard. It plays different than Vallejo, the Tier 10 American Tech Cree sub. But really, if I had to say like what makes Gato different than any of the tech line subs, or even U4501, the coal submarine, is that Gato doesn't have a lot of the balance changes that all the other subs have been given. So as long as subs have been around in different forms, right. early pre-modes, things because we've had subs for a few years now, folks. I mean, they've been in the real game for like a year, but like they've been around for a while now, and a lot of things that changed on them. Gato doesn't have those limitations, like things like dolphining you can do in Gato that you can't really do in the tech line ships anymore, like the ability to quickly change your depth layer and bring the ship up and bring the ship down, or bring the ship up and bring the ship down, that is limited on the other ships. The torpedo dispersion when you play like I was playing Thrasher last night, which is the Tier 10 British tech line boat, and I bring up its forward torpedoes, and it launches a lot of torpedoes forward, but the aiming reticle, right, is very wide, surprisingly very wide, almost like a normal destroyer narrow spread. And I'm like, wow, that's gonna just put those torpedoes all over the place. Now they're homing torpedoes, blah blah blah. But anyway, Gato's doesn't have that. Gato's dumbfire, it's like subs used to be, where it's very narrow. So the Gato, when people talk about like, man, shotgunning sucks, and it does suck to get shotgun, but like, holy cow, can a Gato shotgun like no other shotgun? Gato does not have the Elmer. It does not have the Elmer Fudd barrel. It doesn't have the old Rip Van Winkle scattergun bell like a trumpet at the end of its gun. It's more of it's got a tighter choke. It's a shotgun with a scope, right? That you can almost conga line the torps out of it, like a British DD. It's such a narrow thing, and that's a thing that the tech line ones have been changed to not be able to do, to make shotgunning harder, or to make it less likely that all of the torpedoes hit in the same spot. Whereas with Gato, you can still do that thing and just shotgun people, and then they're gearing torpedoes, and so they hit like a truck. We were playing a game recently. I think you were playing Michelangelo and I was playing Navarin, and this was this week. Yes. This was this week when the coupon had reset. So the coupon reset on Monday, and that meant on Tuesday there was just Gatos everywhere. because people had Gato had come out kind of since the last coupon, I think. And anyway,
That's
so
where this one right here came from. Is from that
yeah,
coupon.
that's where yours came from. I bought my
Yep.
Gato. I might have bought my Gato with the last coupon as well. I can't recall. But anyway, so there was a lot of Gatos in game this week when we played, and I was on the corner of an island with the Navarin, and a guy in a Gato just come terrassing across, and I'm like, well, he's gonna come shotgun me, and there's nothing I can do because this Russian battleship is so slow, and I
Navarin's
can't
not
get
a speed demon.
can't get out of my own way. And sure enough, the torps came, and they're just all on a line, and I couldn't back up fast enough, and I just ate them all. Thankfully, I ate them on the nose, and so my saturation kicked in really quickly, and it didn't dev strike me. He probably hit me for 60k. It was a lot of my health, most of it. And then I had to turn around as quick as I could, which was not quickly, and try to limp away, cooking off heals, and I was effectively out of that match. I couldn't really, and he followed me and was torping at me still. I have a certain set of skills from testing with submarines a lot, so I don't think I'm amazing at it, but I have decent ASW skills. I know how to avoid them better than most.
You managed to stay alive in that battle, and I did not think you were going to. I was impressed.
I didn't die. The guy kept torping at me. He didn't hit me again. But I also, because he couldn't shotgun me, and anyway, that's how you get away from them. Hide away from them. Don't let them shotgun you, and you'll live longer. Anyway. But it was super frustrating, and it's like, but I know I don't get all torn up about it. I wasn't happy. I saw him coming. I dropped ASW on him as best I could. Gato doesn't die quickly. A lot of the tier 10 subs don't die quickly from ASW, unfortunately. And that's what it'll do. It'll just shotgun the crap out of you. And if it doesn't, it has pretty good homing torps too. They're not like British homing torps that'll like turn on a dime and take out DDs easily, but the homing torps aren't bad. And I've seen plenty Gatos sink destroyers as well with those homing torps in close interactions.
Yeah, they can.
And so it's a pretty strong submarine.
It is, and I played it a little bit in testing. Have not played it since I obtained it. So earlier when I was showing it to you, that's a brand new one with 0 miles on the odometer. And you talked about Gato's torps, like the homing torpedoes and the regulars. So I wanted to throw some stats out on those real quickly. The regular dumbfire torpedoes are very familiar if you know Gearing's torpedoes. I don't know if they're exactly the same, but they go 16.5 kilometers, and I think the speeds are the same as Gearing's torpedoes as well. Let me move this window over here. It suddenly became 5,000 pixels wide because of this monitor. Hang on.
Yeah, they're the same range, but the Gato torps actually have a higher damage.
Is it more damage? Okay. So, and those are, again, they're dumbfires. Those are their non-homing torpedoes. Their homing torpedoes, these are the ones that people shotgun you with in Gato. Yeah, those ones only go 6 kilometers. They go very fast. 89 knots is their base speed. And of course they home reasonably well, 10,000 damage. So they're not gonna be able to homing torpedo you from range, but they are gonna potentially be able to dumbfire torpedo you from range. And then when they get in close is when things get spicy. So
and I'm sure I was shotgunned by the Gearing torpedoes because the guy wanted to do damage. I wouldn't shot, even if I'm playing.
You can shotgun.
If I'm playing my Gato, you're gonna shotgun with the dumbfire torpedoes, not the homers, more than likely, especially against a battleship.
And the homers do 10,000 damage. The Gearing styles 18,100 damage. And then these are the base numbers, again from Ship Tool here. But so I mean, can you do big work in this thing? Yes, you can. I found this submarine kind of fun to play the few times I played it in testing. There's a reason I picked it up, and it was because partly it was the price of the steel was right to not screw up my Kitakami purchase. Can't say that word. I'm saying G's now for Gato. But Kitakami purchase is not going to be messed up because I could afford this one with my steel and still make sure I had plenty of credits and resources to pick up the ship that's coming out here soonish. And then, of course, it was also the Gato, which is a pretty powerful submarine. I know I'm not ready for tier 10 submarine play, so I'm not going to launch into a battle. I do not recommend anybody start their submarine journey, their very first sub match in Gato. I think that's a poor choice. The same thing with the 4501 that came out for Cole recently. But when you are ready, I think this is going to be a sub that's interesting to have in your port. Like you said, it hasn't had those adjustments, which were largely nerfs to the tech lines. And so she remains pretty capable and pretty powerful. Now, we know that there are a lot of people who have feelings and thoughts about submarines right now. We're not going to necessarily, dive into the controversy, that kind of stuff that's being had about submarines. That's not interesting for us. But just to talk about whether or not this ship's a good deal, with a coupon 21,000 steel, I know because I just wrote that check this week, which makes her pretty affordable too. She's 28,000 full price. I think she looks cool. I think that that's like the least reason you should choose to get a ship. But the camo I think is really nice. I like the tiger teeth on it basically, and of course the progressively darker blue stripe as you go to the back. I think is just kind of a classy camouflage. It's not over the top, but I think it does look pretty nice. So Gato, I think if you're looking for a steel sub, that's the one you can get. So you don't have a lot of choices in the steel store, but you do now have one in the coal store to choose as well, which we talked about in last week's stream.
Yeah, if you're like you said, don't go get a tier 10 sub and then just drop into playing sub matches because that sucks. But generally, like if you're looking at what's available at tier 10 for submarine play, I think obviously Gato is probably the strongest of those. I still like U2501, the German tech line sub best. I think it's the most forgiving and easy to play, but I'm not a great sub player. And I think if you have Blau, that's fine. Or if, Thrasher is kind of its own thing. U4501 is kind of weird and gimmicky, but this one is the one that's definitely the strongest based on some of the things we've discussed. It may not be the strongest for you, right? And keep that in mind. Kind of like on Austin, if you go on YouTube, you'll find Chad Chaddington playing this and getting monster games. That doesn't mean that you will, and that's the case with any sub. You need to learn how to play subs. It's a weird class to play before you go out and play this. But yeah, I think outside of the controversy of it, it's a cool boat, and the class of ship that it represents historically in my head is like classic United States Navy submarine World War II doctrine stuff, not Blau. Like the Blau class is not that to me, but like this ship is. Like this is like the big US like the tonnage. We're gonna sink Japanese tonnage in World War II, like in real subcompact. It's like Gatos and not Blaus to me.
Okay. Thank you. My wife tells me it is snowing.
It is, yeah.
That's news to me. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah. My wife's been telling me that. My wife's been telling me that for the last half an hour, but doing it with text messaging that didn't interrupt the show.
Yeah, Mrs. Clyde. She knows how to make an entrance. Thanks. Thank you. I don't know if I have to go anywhere today or how snowy it is, but we'll find out later. So Gato, great submarine, cool historical unit as well. I think there's some didn't they do a live stream from a museum ship like in Ohio or something? I think you can visit one of these too. So if you're a naval history buff, you want to go visit submarine museums, I think there are one or two or a few maybe available. So go look into that if you want to go check this submarine out. The real history you talked about, sinking tonnage and things like that, of these kinds of subs is pretty cool. So it's worth looking into if you're a fan of naval history. COD, that's the one. Thank you, Rick. USS COD. The guy who set up that live stream for Wargaming did a great job, by the way. And I don't know if that's still available on Wargaming's website, or if you can watch it on Twitch or anything. If you can't, ask Conception if they put that video anywhere, because he's the one who made that whole event happen. That was when they toured like the longest night of museums or whatever. The USS COD portion of that video was excellent, I thought, and I thought it was really cool. You can even get married on it. Boy, you would have to find a special lady who'd be willing to let you get married on a submarine. Okay. We will go ahead and push on to our next ship. So I appreciate you taking the lead on the Gato discussion there, Skada. That was very helpful.
I don't know enough.
Neither one of us are experts on submarines, guys. So, take the biggest grain of salt you possibly can with these. Okay, Stalingrad. So Stalingrad, long, the crustiest and oldest of the steel ships, I think, or was Bourgogne first?
No, Stalingrad's older.
Stalingrad's the oldest. It was the first steel ship that a lot of people got back then, and it was the first steel ship that we were like afraid of because we didn't know anything about like what kind of ships did they put in this crazy store that only Chads can get into. I didn't have a Costco card that would get me into the steel store at the time, and now I do, at least a little bit more. And so Stalingrad's a big cruiser. She's got the highest sigma value in the game. Sigma, of course, is just talking about distributions and probability and statistics and things like that. Let me pull it up here on the screen. She's got very large guns that basically punch through everything. We really like the guns on Stalingrad. They're very accurate and they hit very hard. The artillery for this thing being 305s. It's funny how my memory gets bad, but this might be the first time we had 305s on a cruiser in the game. I think it was. And of course, at the time, we were just blown away. Before this ship came out, we used to joke that Moskva, if you took a Moskva into clan battles, it was like taking an extra battleship. And then Stalingrad came out and told us what it was really like to take an extra battleship in a cruiser slot to a clan battle. One negative about this ship, of course, is that she is a large cruiser and thus she suffers from 60-second fires. This is not the case with cruisers like Petropavlovsk, which is why Petro is so popular in clan battles. She, like Moskva, like Stalingrad, all very tanky when bow in, and of course Stalingrad was one of the ships that cemented that reputation for the Soviet ships in the game. I think this is a good ship. It's funny, before I recently got my Bourgogne top damage game, my previous top damage was in Stalingrad. And it was, I think, 192,000. So, if you're a person with a 300,000 damage game, then now you've learned a little bit more about what it is I bring to the table in randoms, which is less than, Super Chad games. But Stalingrad, really tanky ship, really tough ship. I don't personally love to play it in randoms very much. And in clan battles, I tend to choose Petro instead because of, fire reasons and nice low citadels and things like that, even though Petro has 220 millimeter guns. I think Stalingrad, if you're looking for a reliable tanky ship, maybe you're just getting into clan battles, you're playing in a Squall or a Gale League clan, and you guys are just getting your group together, you're going to find out how high you can go. Stalingrad, I think, can make sense for a player who's looking at things like that. But of course, there are coal options like Moskva. There's the tech line options as well. I know I'm kind of getting into talking about competitive play. Maybe that's really not the best angle for this in terms of what's the deal with that steel ship Stalingrad. But she's a big tanky ship that hits things when you click on them and does big damage when you do connect those shots. Skada, kind of your initial impressions about Stalingrad. What do you think of this one in 2023 as a pickup for somebody who's thinking about grabbing a steel ship?
I think a lot of the stuff about Stalingrad historically is probably still in place as far as the way the game works. It still has insanely accurate guns that are point and click because they're super high velocity, and the AP on it is very, very good. And you can citadel when you're in a random and like you said, you don't. I like playing Stalingrad in randoms probably more than I like playing it in competitive. Because it's kind of more like playing like Slava or something like that, where I don't like being up. I don't like being up in places in Stalingrad where you would use radar in random or in competitive anymore because of the fire duration. And because of the way it works. I think you talk about playing Petro. I even think that you're probably better off playing Moskva nowadays just because of the fire duration stuff. But in randoms, what I like doing with it is you're getting to positions where you can use the AP on the sides of stuff, and not just cruisers, which it's very good at doing a lot of damage to, but battleships. I mean, everybody who has Stalingrad certainly has stories about how they citadeled like an Iowa from 18K. And I've done similar shots with Petro, but it's harder to do with Petro because of the dispersion, unless you have like unique mod, right? So the guns on this are just so accurate. The 2.65 Sigma is insane.
It's the highest in the game.
The
next best number
and the shells.
Any ship is 2.2. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so the shells are just point and click, and they go where they go. It does have 12-kilometer radar still. It has other sensors and features, and is very, the old battleship Stalingrad kind of joke exists for it. It's it's very tanky for what it is. Although if you give up your side, you're going to get punched in it. But that's the case with Moskva as well, with that higher freeboard. That's again where Petro cheats because it's lower in the water. But as far as popularity today, I don't feel like you see Stalingrad nearly as much as we did when I started playing the game back in like 2019.
No, that's true.
You know, or 2020 when I started playing the game. You just don't see it as much because there's just so many more ships, and there's other ships that do similar things, or it's just like that kind of play style maybe isn't as popular with the player base. We still do see them in competitive. You tend to see them used though in like the lower ranks of clan battles, and we're not like Hurricane Typhoon players.
Right,
but
right.
you tend to see these more being used down in Gale, sometimes probably out of like necessity, based on clans and who they have available and what ships they have that makes sense.
Yeah, I got a Stalingrad.
And you know,
Would that work? Ugh, I guess.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then obviously when they start like when they get around to like implementing limitations on ships in clan battles, like where like you can only have a
Right,
petro, or you can
right.
only have this or that, then you start to see this creep back into the meta. But you know, it really not at like the real meta, like where Chad's play. But anyway, you know, I think Stalingrad can be fun. I think in randoms I still enjoy playing it. I've had fun games in randoms with it just because when you're in a tier 10 and you have these crazy guns and there's more targets to shoot at, you have more opportunities to find people that are angled, or not angled, which is what happens in clans all the time. You're just like shooting at the bows of things. You know, when you get the sides of things with this in randoms, and maybe you're top tier and you're shooting at tier 8s, you know, like blasting a Baltimore with this and things like that. That's a lot of fun. And the guns are still really a lot of fun to use in that way. But this ship in randoms also kind of can get picked on by aircraft carriers. I don't feel like the AA on it's worth a squirt. And so like that you know, you get kind of beat up by it in that way too. And it's a big ship, and it's not a fast, like it doesn't handle great.
Yeah, she's large and lumbers, you know, that's for sure.
Yeah, and so yeah, you know, I think it's safe to say that it shows its age in 2023. But you can't get away from the guns of it. Like that's still really what makes it interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I you know, you were talking about the playing it in clan battles out of necessity. I had an opportunity to play on stream with the Wargaming team. They were doing Wargaming Does Clan Battles, and they needed some mercs, and so I volunteered. And Boxy pulled me in. He said, "Great, get your Petro ready." I said, "What if I don't have a Petro?" And I said, "I could do a Nevsky." And he goes, "Do you have a Stalingrad?" Right? That was the conversation we had. And I played Stalingrad and managed to hit a couple of shots or whatever. I think I put that video on YouTube. But it was. You know, it's a ship that you can wind up in, and it worked. You know, I hit stuff because the guns are amazing on this ship. I still think it's a worthwhile ship to get if you like this big, heavy cruiser type play. We do have a couple of other alternatives for you. We've already mentioned Petro, we've mentioned Moskva. Those are great ships that you can choose as well. So for people looking for more of that kind of ship, here's another option to get one. Again, been around for a long time, and yeah. It burns, and everybody knows that it burns, right? The fire spam is the biggest concern, for sure. So we'll have to look for that eventually. I know Zarmat says you were in Nevsky, not Stalingrad. I know I played a Nevsky game, but I think in a previous season, Zarmat, I did a Stalingrad match too. I played Nevsky more recently because I was able to convince them to let me play Nevsky because I'm better at that, or at least more comfortable. Maybe it's a better term. Anyway, so that's Stalingrad. She's available. How much is she? 28,000 steel. So same price as Gato. You know, if you're looking to get this with a coupon, pretty affordable steel ship, really. And when you think about, you know, pound for pound what you're paying to get those guns, it's decent. You can get a lot of good work done with this ship, even today. But there's definitely plenty of opportunities to look at alternatives to this ship as well. So if you're looking to get your first steel ship and you already have something like a Petro or Moskva, this isn't going to bring you variety. If that's what you're looking for, it might be worth looking elsewhere. Z42. I can't remember if it's my turn or your turn. Do you want me to talk about Z42 or do you want to talk about Z42?
Yeah, it's your turn because I can't talk about Z42.
Oh, okay. Well, that's perfect. Z42 is a German destroyer that you can get for steel. Let me bring it up here. And Skada says he can't talk about it. That's due to testing NDA. So I am able to speak about this ship, so I will. So I was really hoping I was going to like Z42. When they announced it, it came out, it had a bunch of interesting things listed for it in terms of its DPM and everything, and we were all very excited about what we called at the time the German Haragumo. I'm going to represent this ship fairly. For me, this ship doesn't really do it, but my opinion shouldn't tell you if it's going to work for you. She's a very AP focused ship. Let me bring up her, not her armor layout. Oops, all the misclicks in the world. She's got her AP shells. She does have HE as well, but the HE has a really terrible alpha damage, 1200 in my build, whereas the AP is 2300. And the AP actually pens pretty well as well. Let me grab those numbers. C42. Oops, I put S. There we go. The AP pen at 12 kilometers is 37 millimeters. HE pen is 26 millimeters because these are 105 millimeter guns. This thing can do a really, really great job of shredding through enemy destroyers if you catch them out. She's also got hydros. We can grab a quick look at her equipment as well. 6 kilometer hydros, which is awesome. Those are some of the best hydros in the game. She's got a speed boost, 6 short burst smokes that only last for 40 seconds, which lets her pop smoke, hide, and then redeploy to get out of sight. So Z42 is a very strong ship. However, she's very unforgiving. And Brand just says, did they say detonation? Z42 does not have any way to recover hit points or heal or anything like that. So if you get into a position where you are under enemy fire and can't get out, the ship does not survive very long. It's sort of a, we talked about a bristling honey badger earlier for I think it was Austin, right? This ship is kind of the same way. It's trying to do so much damage that you don't fight it, that you try to run away. And it's position dependent in a fairly extreme way. At least my experience with it is that way. So that if you wind up in a position where you're outplayed, you're outpositioned, you're surrounded, you're radared, and your smoke's not going to do you any good, and you can't seem to get away, she goes down really fast because she's relatively frail. The damage output is incredible, and so for players who are very competent with positioning their ships, I think you can have a really good time with Z42. But I do think, of course, that if you're the kind of player that makes a mistake every now and again, and I am that kind of player, you can have a pretty unsatisfying time in it. It's been a few months since I've played this now. I bought it right away when it came out because it's a destroyer and I like destroyers. And so I'm going to wind up giving it a try again here. I think kind of like I played Marceau after we did our Cole video. I'm going to give Z42 another go here and see how it goes. So Biggle says, it's not as good as the Z52. It's just not. And then Bowmaster said, Z42 broke up with me in a text. What a bad way to end a relationship. Oh, I'm so sorry, Bowmaster. Hoghammer says, I thought about the Z42, but now I'm leaning more towards the Z52 with the unique upgrade. So the unique upgrade, that's the legendary upgrade, is the kind of casual term for those. Those cost, I think, 20,000-ish research points. This ship has a cost of 27,000. So with a coupon, it's actually about the same price as the unique upgrade. That's an interesting way to look at that, Hoghammer. And I'm not sure if that's necessarily the right trick for everybody, but it's something you could consider. People are comparing this to Z52, and I think that's a fair comparison. That's the Techline Tier 10 ship. In fact, I'll bring it up here and put it on the screen for us. Z52 is a pretty reliable ship. When she first came out, this was one of the first destroyers that people said, oh, you're supposed to use the AP on a destroyer. And it was kind of a big revelation. This has been in the game for a very long time. She also has 6 kilometer hydros. She also has no way to heal hit points. She's got longer running smokes, and then reasonable torpedoes. They're not amazing torps, but then pretty decent guns. Does not have the damage output of Z42, but she's a little bit more of an all-rounder, which I think works well for people.
I'm jelly that you have that camo.
It is a fun camo. I'm very happy that I have that camo. Lucked into that one in one of those traveling around the summertime containers or whatever.
Isn't Z42 the same hull as like Z44 and...
It looks similar to Z44. Let me pull up Z44. We'll take a look. Yeah, it is. It looks very similar. Yeah. Let me put that back over here. So here's Z44. Note the blocky superstructure here. A couple of single barrel turrets up front. If we swap that out for Z42, now obviously we're going to see the guns change, but the hull remains the same shape. 2 stacks. So very similar to Z44.
Yeah, I don't have Z42 in my port, but mechanically, understand the gist behind it. I think you started off talking about how it was gonna be, people were looking forward to it being a certain kind of ship.
Right.
From what I've seen, I don't know that it fit that bill, but it's one I haven't acquired yet, and it it's always, as I would say, oh, it'll probably be my next steel ship, but then something else probably will come out that I'd rather get. So
yeah, I've always got an idea of like, this is my next steel ship, and then something comes out and I change my mind every time. So yeah, I could see that being a continuous thing here for folks who've been looking at this when they've been thinking about it, but then something new or more interesting comes out. I think every time I talk about this ship on stream, there's always somebody who comes out and says, no, this is a really cool ship, it's really rad, you just don't know how to play it and stuff, and that's fine. Maybe that's true. I talked about how, if you're the kind of player who makes a mistake, that's me, and pays for it dearly, that can be a problem. But it doesn't mean that this ship is a bad ship for everybody. It just isn't working with my playstyle, where I like to be a little further away. I like to be able to recover hit points. I like to be able to have HE.
Doesn't it? Yeah. Doesn't it also have the short smokes? And you may have brought that
40-second smokes. Yeah.
I think
Some
last
players
time
like
around we
those a
talked
lot.
about.
Yeah.
I think last time around we talked about this ship. I said if you want to mix the Tier 8 Premium Z35 with the Tier 8 Premium Ben Yang, and it seems like people are like, what are you talking about? But like, as I recall, like if you really want to be proficient in Z42, you need to use the AP on it a lot.
You do. Yes.
And that's like Fen Yang, and otherwise the short smokes and the stuff, the rest of the stuff about it is a lot like the premium Tier 8 German Z35. The torpedoes reach further, but didn't Z42 end up with like the torpedoes off of T22 or something?
It does have really low damage torps. Let me bring that number. 13,700, which is a pretty standard torpedo damage for German ships. A lot of them have those 13,700 damage torpedoes. There was a period in testing where it had like 7 or 7.5 kilometer torpedoes, which you may remember from the dev blog, but now it's got 10 kilometer torps that do 13.7, and they only go 62 knots. So they're kind of mediocre. You should use them when you're playing the boat because it's a source of damage that you're just ignoring if you don't, but they don't really hit home very hard when they do land on a target at tier 10, tier 11, Yeah. Okay. I think we'll call that good. We can't have as free of a conversation there as we'd like to. Maybe if you get this one in your port, we can dig into it a little bit deeper next time. But I think we've given a pretty good characterization of what the ship is and some of its strengths and some of its weaknesses. But again, if you get this thing, lean into that AP. That is what you're supposed to use, which means you need to learn to aim for superstructures. You need to look for lightly armored targets. And of course, very, very, very much manage your spottedness, right? The more detected you are, the more likely you're to take a lot of damage. And so you want to farm from smoke or over an island, or farm when you think they can't respond, right? And you'll get very good or very dead real quick with the positioning on this one, that's for sure. Okay, so next up is Ragnar. Did you wind up getting Ragnar?
I did. That's second to last steel ship I bought.
Okay.
I bought it between, like Gato, I think I bought with the last coupon, then I bought Ragnar, and then I just used the coupon again on the reset this week. So yeah,
Ragnar is interesting because it was immensely popular for a while, and then it we don't see it a ton these days, do we?
No, I don't think so. It's again, like you were talking about, like, are there tech tree ships that creep it? You look at the newer tech line split with that ends in Gdansk, and I don't know that they play this. I don't feel like the play styles are similar at all, other than that both are tier 10 pan-European destroyers with radar.
Right, right.
Otherwise, the similarities tend to end there. The guns work completely differently. One has torpedoes, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think that has given more options for a player base that maybe goes, I don't know that I need to get Ragnar. I've got Ragnar at home, kind of thing, right?
Yeah. And I think the radar on Gdansk is so short, right? I can't remember how long the one is on this boat. We're about to look.
Yeah, it plays way better on this, right?
But
this
I think
is
it's
small
it's far stronger radar on this ship. So when people, I have, at least in my build, a 30-second action time, same range as Gdansk. I just got my Gdansk recently, and I like that ship. But like you say, the similarities are few, but you could maybe consider giving Ragnar. The guns on Ragnar 152s And so the AP works really good on cruisers and even battleship superstructures, and the HE works pretty good on everything. And the reload is pretty short as well. 3 seconds in my build, and I've got a 15.6 kilometer range with excellent velocity. So it's really easy to hit big targets with this at any range, and it's really easy to hit smaller targets at reasonable ranges, maybe 13 or even 12 kilometers. You can really mow those guys down with the thing.
There's some unique things about Ragnar, right? And that Ragnar has a repair party, even though it's only like repairs 14%, but it has a repair party, which is nice on a tier 10 destroyer, especially a gunboat without smoke.
Yeah.
Where you're more than likely to take damage. Obviously, 30-second base radar. It has emergency engine power, which is like our favorite kind of speed boost.
Because it's all of the speed.
Because it's all of the speed. You know, that 30%. It's like turn on the other engine, Klaus, like or whatever. Like
Okay.
Turn on. Engage. Engage the hybrid drive or something, right? Because it just takes off and that part of it's really cool. I think I was reticent to get this ship.
This does not seem like a Skada Herb ship.
No, right? I had been able to play this ship before I had it, which is a option given to people like that not the normal public has. Right. Normal player basis. I had been given the option to play Ragnar, being as part of the test organization. There was a camo or something, right? Like you probably have it. It's like that. So in the annals of the way testing works, they'll put I was not in the test program when Ragnar was in test, but when they put out that camo that Clyde's showing, they gave everybody in the test program the Ragnar just so we could double check and look at that camo. Stuff like that happens all the time. And so I had played Ragnar a little bit I just didn't enjoy it. I was like, yeah, it's what I thought it was. It's a bad concealed gunboat that is not very fast, and there's a lot of things there that just don't do anything for me. I know how Ragnar's worked. I had played against Ragnar's a ton because Ragnar had been out for a while. You would be in a DD and a cap, and you would spot a Ragnar, and then the Ragnar would spot you with his radar and try to kill you. That's the play style. It's a Ragnar goes up and tries to spot another DD. It tries to get spotted by another DD so that it knows that it can radar and spot that DD back.
Because the radar range and the detection range for the ship are both 7.5.
Are the same, right? Yeah. And then its goal is to pounce on somebody with those guns, with their insane reload and good damage, and murder them before they themselves get murdered for doing as such. And then more than likely, because you're rat-a-tatting somebody, let's say you do kill that other DD, maybe you go dark because nobody else saw you do it. But if you don't, which tends to be what happens early in matches because there's still a bunch of other players.
A lot of players, yep.
You are using that incredible speed boost to get the hell away with your guns quiet, so they go dark. And then once other DD threats are dead in the game, you farm battleships with the HE, right?
Yeah.
That's the general evolution of how you would play a Ragnar in the course of a 20-minute random battle, right? You hunt DDs, then you farm battleships. Is that kind of how it would go?
Pretty much. I mean, your initial opportunity. I mean, when the first few minutes of the game happen, the teams are feeling each other out, and that's when there's like a period, you might want to call it like discovery happens, right? Where you figure out where are all the enemy ships on the team, and you do exactly what you just kind of described, right? You drive up towards the cap, you get spotted, you can smash your radar, you'll spot the guy, and in that engagement, you're probably going to try to kill him collaboratively with allies, whether they're in your division or not. Dutch Eagle and Flyer asked an interesting question I want to get back to too, so Dutch, don't let me forget. But you'll get into a scrap with those guys, and hopefully you kill that guy or your allies do or something. And if you do, that opens up some options for you, because then you can play a little further forward. If you survive that first portion of the battle, which can be dangerous because random torpedoes and stupid things like that can happen to you, which nobody wants. Then you get to that midpoint of the game, and by that point, a lot of the things that can spot you, you either know they're on the other side of the map, you know they're on your side of the map, or you know they're dead. And so you can make different decisions at that point, which is cool. But once you get into the position where most of the threats on your side, or maybe in the game, to spotting you are dead, you can pretty much drive around freely and farm anything, and the mains do a great job of that. This thing loves to farm battleships, but it needs to kill destroyers first, And so if you like that kind of challenging gameplay, the trick is, of course, in that initial discovery portion of the game, you go up there and you get spotted while you're spotting somebody, because that's the technique, more or less. And then you've got to survive that. She's got some tools to help her with that. 30,000 hit points if you build for it fully. And you talked about the hull repair. Yes, it's a 14% hull repair, which is pretty typical. But with 30,000 hit points, 14% is a lot, right? So you can survive a couple of those engagements. Obviously, the better you do at not taking damage, the better off you'll be for getting to that later stage of the game where you can really farm up bigger damage numbers. My performance in Ragnar has been pretty bad, actually. I bought the ship hoping I'd be good at it, and I found out pretty quickly I wasn't. And then I've slowly been getting better in it. I've put it on the shelf here for a little while, and we were talking the other day, Skada, about how we don't see them in clan battles as much as we used to. And this is getting back to Dutch's question, which is, can it be said that Ragnar is more suited to clan battles or playing in a division? I think Ragnar works in randoms and clan battles. I don't see it a ton in clan battles these days. It seems like the old standbys for destroyers are, I almost want to say, like making a comeback. And of course, I'm speaking from a gold, a Storm clan or a Gale clan perspective. So take that as a note about what I'm saying. We see a lot of, I feel like we've been seeing a lot of gearings come back, and we've got daring as an ever-present feature. Haragumos to do smoking for their allies. We see those classic ships, and we haven't seen as many Ragnars. But I do think that she could still work well there. I didn't even mention Kleber and Marceau. Those kinds of ships are still popular too. Where Ragnar, when it's not running its speed boost, it struggles to get around well enough. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the ships you're just naming there, right? So it's a no smoke gunboat, no smoke nor no torpedo gunboat. That's gimmick is that it has radar, right?
Yeah.
And so now, especially when and I know we struggle with this a little bit because it's like, well, I'm not seeing it in competitive, and we're in the middle of a clan season right now, or early in a clan season right now, that has like no limitations. So if you see radar destroyers this season, it's Småland, Gdansk, and Yuyang.
Yeah.
and Yuyang has made a major resurgence because of deep water torpedoes stemming things like pushing Napolis and Marseille and things like that, right? So like I feel like the problem with it is that if you're in a clans or a competitive meta that limits the number of other destroyers you're going to face, which we see a lot now. If you only can do one thing, I think that hurts it. If you face one right now and it kills, if it kills your team's DDs, and you don't have vision, then the other team's gonna win, and that sucks for you. But after the Ragnar has killed those DDs, it's also not running around and dumping torps and doing other jobs, right? And so maybe that's why we're not seeing it as much. But I don't know. Everything's cyclical. Things come and go. I just think right now, when people can play Småland without limitations, that's what they're going to play if they want to bring a radar destroyer.
No, you're exactly right. Because why not have the opportunity for the hydros, or for the radar torpedoes?
Yeah, you have the radar, the torpedoes, extremely better concealment, like all those things, right? So that's different. And you see Yuyangs with radar and the deep waters, because they're not going to be gunboating, but they're there to do a couple of different jobs. And then you're going to see even we see Gdansk now that it's there, because Gdansk has torpedoes and guns and smoke, and even though the radar is very short, it still provides that functionality. So I think maybe in that way it's crept a little bit. As far as like I did get Ragnar. I've played one random battle in Ragnar. My numbers in it was actually an airship escort battle, and it was terrible.
Oh no.
Yeah, I remember it specifically. I think statistically I have one loss in Ragnar that I did like no damn, like maybe 15k in, like
just
because it was like, hey, let's go, it's airship escort, you got to push the airship destroyer, like, oh, you get trucked, like, it's like, okay, cool, like this isn't fun, like whatever. And generally, like, it's not the kind of ship that I want to play. Like I don't if I was gonna play an open water gunboat destroyer in randoms, it would be something that actually can get out of its own way, like Marseille or
some speed,
Kleber, or I'm not gonna say Caba or Delny, but you know what I mean. Like it would actually have speed and range, and be able to like, you know, do speed juking or turnout juking or stuff like that. And Ragnar just feels kind of like a big boat to me. It kind of reminds me of driving around Tromp. Like they kind of feels like
they don't.
It feels like a cruiser. Yeah. It feels like a cruiser in a destroyer slot to me in that way.
Yeah, and I don't think you're wrong there. Once you hit that speed boost, it feels like what you want it to feel like all the time. You know, like it's so good with speed boost running. But you're definitely right. You know, you mentioned the people are going to take Smallland right now while they can, and they will if they have the ship available. Smallland's guns are harder to hit with than Ragnar's. The loftiness of the shells takes a little bit more practice to land the shells. So, you know, at your first couple of games, if you've never played either ship, you will land more shells with Ragnar than you would with a Smallland. But over time, if you practice with that Smallland, you'll get better and better. In fact, I've got about a 2/3 done video about that kind of concept. I should finish that one of these days. It's been on the hopper for a long time. But yeah, so I think that's a pretty good discussion on Ragnar. I still think Ragnar is cool to have. I don't find myself reaching for it to play it, even on stream. And I don't find people are asking about it and just being like, hey, will you play Ragnar for me? It's not coming up as often. It comes up a little bit around coupon times because people are thinking about what they're going to get next. But it's not still doing the things that it was doing in terms of popularity, showing up in competitive play and things like that.
And only 2 destroyers, and if you're a destroyer player and you have steel and you want to buy a destroyer, you got 2 to buy. And why do I have it? Because like you said, that doesn't seem like a ship you'd want to play, and it's not. Like, why do I have it? Well, I had steel for a steel ship, and when I can get a steel ship, I just get one. Yeah. And my choices at that time were Ragnar, Z42, or Vallejo. Out of those 3 ships, I bet I would enjoy playing Vallejo the most, but I have to buy the tier 10s first because of snowflakes and because of birthday month. That only makes sense. Why buy things for joy? And then
we've got to stop thinking that way, but I know what you mean.
If it's between Ragnar and Z42, 2 ships that I really didn't give a dang if I had, I bought Ragnar because it was older. That was my only
Your algorithm
point.
is just that. Like,
it was if steel, use, buy ship, get out. This literally was a steel ship I bought to get it off the list of steel ships I didn't have, not because I gave 2 shakes about playing it ever.
Yeah.
So.
And I'll play it every now and again, right? I did uncork it recently. You and I ran a game, I feel like 3 or 4 months ago. I ran it for about a week, pretty hard. I think it was probably back when I was collecting that data for that video, actually. And I started grinding more XP and stuff on it, getting better, doing better with damage. I still have a pretty poor performance in it overall, but and that's because it is different than all the other boats that are in this nation, the European nation. So it's kind of funky that way. Anyway, okay. We'll move on from this one. Next up is Plymouth. I don't remember whose turn it is. Did I make you start this one? I can do Plymouth.
I don't. Just go for it.
All right. We got 3 ships to go. Plymouth is a steel boat. You can get it in World of Warships. It's a light cruiser with 16 main battery guns. Let me grab it here and bring it up, and I'll put it on the screen. So I bought this on a Saturday after talking to you and you were like, why don't you get a steel boat? And I was like, okay. And I bought this full price, no coupon. I don't know why. And I didn't really know if I was gonna like it. I wasn't the biggest Minotaur fan necessarily at the time, and I bought this boat, and I actually really like the Plymouth. It's actually a really good boat. It's treated me well. I've got a lot of games in it now. Performance has worked out better than my overall account performance, which is great. This is another boat, like I was talking about with Austin, where people go, name the 2 worst steel ships. This one's almost always on the list. And I think those people, again, they're thinking about it from a specific perspective. This is a very frail ship. I think a lot of people have a hard time with light cruisers, and they consider them bad ships because they're not good at light cruisers, or they're not comfortable with light cruisers, or they don't like the damage output of light cruisers, or they don't think they're competitive or whatever. Plymouth is probably not the most powerful. I'll come out and say it. It's not the most powerful ship that's on the list here, but it has like all of the tools. It's got a hull repair, it's got hydros, it's got radar, it's got smoke, it's got the improved pen angles and all the fancy British AP stuff that works well. And so if you like ships like Brisbane, if you like ships like Minotaur, this ship can definitely work for you and be fun. I have taken Plymouth into clan battles. I don't recommend it, but When Jetty said I could take anything, I took it to clan battles recently, and I was one of the last 2 ships alive, and we won, and it was amazing, and stuff like that. So Plymouth, I think, is most fun, probably most usable in random battles. Maybe you could try it in ranked. If I ever get to a place where I can play tier 10 ranked again, I'll take it out. But I don't know. I like Plymouth, but it's not because she's powerful and makes my life easier. It's because when you have a great game in Plymouth, it feels really good. So for me, that's kind of my take on it. Skada, I think you have this boat?
Yeah, I've had Plymouth a long time.
I thought so.
Yeah, probably 3-4 mills. Well, yeah, probably four steel ships back. Yeah, I like Plymouth a lot too. I think we Plymouth is probably not popular because of what it is. It was funny when I went to go get it. I didn't even realize it didn't have HE because I thought it was like, I thought it was like, oh no, they put one at tier 10 and that's what it makes it different.
And they gave it HE.
And then it's like no, it doesn't. Okay, and it has it has less DPM than Minotaur, so people might bang on it for that. But it has a heavier salvo weight than Minotaur in regards to the ability. Like if you're not just cycling your guns all the time, if you're actually like trying to hit stuff with all of these guns that it has, it actually has a higher AP salvo damage by quite a bit. It has less range than Minnow. The reload is twice as long as Minnow. It's really more of playing like it's more like playing Edinburgh or Neptune. If you go up the line, it's from Fiji to Edinburgh to Neptune to this, it feels more like that progression. And I think that's what they were thinking when they made this. They were like, okay, let's progress up that instead of doing, going over to Minotaur, which was like the post World War II design of an AA cruiser. This ship feels more like a World War II 1946, like kind of more
just
of the same
post,
kind of reality.
Just post.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And so, but I like playing the ship. I know some of the first fun games I had in it after I got it. I think at the time, you had Brisbane from the Brisbane event, because Brisbane was dragged out a long time. And I remember we did some two-man matches with me in Plymouth and you in Brisbane. A lot of like trading our smokes and doing goofy stuff like that. Dumping our torps because Plymouth doesn't have as good a torps as Brisbane, but it has fine torpedoes. And so and then we both had I had smoke and you didn't have smoke, but we both had radar, and so we were doing some kind of silly two-man play. But I like this ship. I might like this ship better than Minotaur. I've never enjoyed Minotaur, and that's probably more of a historical context thing where I finished that line a long time ago, and I wasn't as skilled at the game as I am now. And so a lot of my Minotaur memories are like, I'm going to move up to this island. The ship won't stop. Why won't it stop? Please stop. Please stop.
Please stop.
Why won't you stop?
Please stop.
Dev strike. I was just dev struck by Stalingrad. I wouldn't stop.
Stalingrad, so everybody. There you go.
Yeah, it's stuff like that. Those are my memories of Minotaur. And then I have memories of playing against Minotaurs and GKs where some guy, I can't see this jerk. He's in smoke forever, and he's just farming the bejesus out of me with his AP. And so I just don't have great warm fuzzies about Minotaur. I really like Edgar. I like Brisbane a lot. I probably should go back and play Minotaur, but whatever. But I like Plymouth. I personally enjoy playing Plymouth more. Not that I play any of those ships all that often. So again, what you're trading off, if you're used to Edinburgh or Neptune or Fiji, that's what you're going to with Plymouth. That's how it's different feeling than Minotaur. Minotaur just is one of those things, kind of like we were talking about earlier, where you're going up to, from Alsace to Republique. This is more like going, from this would be like that. It's like Neptune to this is kind of more like Alsace to Bourgogne. It's more of that and not the drastic change that the tier 10 tech line boat brings. It really in-house stuff feels, in my opinion. But yeah, Plymouth again has what does it have? 10 kilometer torpedoes. They're actually pretty much the same torpedoes that Minotaur has, but Minotaur has more, like twice as many. Like Plymouth has like 2x4 and Minotaur has 4x4. So the torpedo DPM is just way higher. But that's, neither here nor there, right? You're just launching half as many torpedoes. Plymouth AA is just woefully worse than Minotaur. Um, Plymouth, I think, still has the same ASW problem that it has over the side ASW, which sucks. It'd be nice if it had air ASW. That would kind of differentiate it. And then it has very similar consumables, but it doesn't have, whereas Minotaur has, specialized repair teams, Plymouth does not. And I think that's a place too where people look at Plymouth and go, well, that sucks. Like it doesn't have specialized repair teams. Why doesn't it have that? And I kind of agree. I don't know why it just has a normal repair party. It only repairs 14% instead of 40%, and that part kind of sucks. Smokes are the same, hydros are the same. Plymouth's radar is, if you run radar Plymouth, you have radar and smoke on Plymouth.
Yeah,
and that's
you have all the good
right?
stuff all the time.
You have all the good stuff, which is kind of like playing Belfast, but it only has 9-kilometer radar instead of 10-kilometer radar, and so there's that's like a slight nerf to that. So, but all in all, I think Plymouth is fun if you like British cruisers and you like British light cruisers. It's just kind of a variation on a theme. I don't know that it's one that everybody needs to be like, I need to go get that. And again, like you said, it's not really popular in like competitive modes. And I don't know if people play in ranked. I have no idea. I doubt it. I don't feel like it's super popular. I like Plymouth. I think when I got Plymouth, about the exact same time I bought Gibraltar from the Research Bureau, because I enjoy British cruisers, and those are like weird, like not like the others, like Gibraltar's like this dumb Research Bureau AP only. It's like this dumb AP only Goliath kind of thing, and then Plymouth is this other kind of dumb alternate thing for the light line, and I kind of like that about them as a collector of ships in the game. It's just, if you like a thing, it's like that thing in a way,
right? So and I know I talked a little bit about when I got Plymouth, and I was like, I got Plymouth, and I went and I played it, and I was like, I don't know if I like this. And then I kind of like started to really enjoy it and had a good time with it. And I think really me getting Plymouth is what made me go, oh, I like British light cruisers. It's what made me ready for ships like Brisbane to come out, and it reminded me that I really enjoyed Fiji, that I had a good time with Edinburgh, those kinds of things. And then after all of that, I went back and played Minotaur again and had a good time with Minnow, when I played through Minotaur, I played a lot of games in that, because back in the day you used to be able to unlock legendary modules or the unique upgrades by playing the ships a lot, and Minotaur was the last one of those ships that I played through, and I didn't have as good a time in it, but going back to it later, as a more experienced player, had a great time with it. And Plymouth was just one that really kicked off that appreciation for British light cruisers for me. So I kind of went back after that and played a lot more, played Belfast 43 a little bit more after that, and so on. And so there's more British light cruiser love out there. So again, I don't want you guys to think that Plymouth is a powerhouse and that you can just drive into the middle of the B cap and say, come at me, because that's not what she's like. But you can definitely have a good time in the Plymouth if you like British light cruiser play. I do not want you to buy this boat if you are a Petro and Ohio fan only, right? If those are your two favorite ships and it's because they're big and they have lots of hit points and they do those don't do things like Plymouth does, so you would not be happy if those are the only kinds of ships that you like to play. But if you do have an appreciation for light cruisers and stuff like that, Plymouth brings a bunch of neat tricks to the table. It's almost like this is what Tiger 59 should have been like. Like Tiger's missing a couple of turrets because it's similar, right? It's got smoke and radar and all that stuff, but it doesn't have the guns. And Plymouth brings the guns, right? And so, I almost hate to invoke Tiger 59's name because that's such a meme and a punchline. But Plymouth is like, what if that was done perfectly, in my opinion, at least. So,
I would relate it. I would relate it more to if you're looking at a like premium at a lower tier, probably Belfast 43. Similar hull, similar AP situation,
with the hull repair,
radars,
which is nice.
The difference is that Belfast 43 doesn't have the hull repair, right? And so I think that's kind of more similar that way. Tiger 59, I can kind of see some of the comparison you're making there, but Tiger 59 really is to me that is related to Minotaur
It's more
more,
Minotaur flavored. You're exactly right. Yeah.
but I can see some
Just with
again, all of
consumables.
these things, no one's relating any of these to Hampshire or Nottingham. Let's just make that clear. If we're going to start talking about random, we could do a whole ship show on tier 8 British premium cruisers, and so we'll save that for a down month.
Yeah, if I'm ever bored of stuff, we'll do that French battleship thing and the British light cruiser thing, and we'll have a good old time. I would actually really enjoy to do that discussion. That'd be fun, but maybe someday in the future. The other thing I wanted to point out that I don't think we've mentioned is the concealment on this boat, 9.2 kilometers. Maybe you mentioned it. If so, I missed it. But 9.2K is really short. And then, of course, if you do get spotted, you've got smoke. And of course, if somebody's close to you, pop that smoke, hit the radar. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with Plymouth. I think we've been talking about this boat for too long. GMAC's probably making fun of us. Okay, I'm going to throw, did you wind up getting Vallejo? That's one you still don't have.
No, I can't really. I can't really talk about Vallejo.
That's okay. I'll run over it, and you can.
All I would say, like briefly,
comments or questions. Or go ahead.
I will intro it for you. I'll say Vallejo is a tier 9. It's the only tier 9 steel ship. It's an American light cruiser. It is as if a proto Worcester, in that it has a similar gun layout to Worcester with 5x2 152s as opposed to 6x2, so you have one less turret. So it feels more like Worcester in that regard than Seattle. It has what I would also say about this ship is it doesn't have any sensors. Like, it doesn't have radar. You see these in battle, and you expect it because it's like an American cruiser that it's going to have radar, and it does not. It doesn't have hydros, and those aren't available to it either.
Right.
It has defensive AA. It has fighter available to it. The one thing that has is rapid takeoff spotter, which is like a Lazo style spotter, which lets you have a spotter plane up for a minute, increases your range by 20%, and it only cools down for 10 seconds. So you can have it up for a minute, and then you have a 10-second stop, and then you can put it right back up again. And have it up again, right? And that boosts the range on it quite a bit because it has, tail of the tape on it. It has the same range as Seattle, and because it's a tier 9, I'll talk about Seattle in comparison a little bit, right? As opposed to Worcester. If you look at it as like, how is this compared to its compatriot there? And so, it actually has lower DPM stats than Seattle, and that's just an artifact of the number of guns. It has slightly better reload, but not amazingly better. It doesn't have Worcester levels of reload. At a sub 5-second reload, it has a 6-second reload. But it does have wildly different shells. The shells have much lower flight times because they have less drag coefficient, and so it's like it's like basically all the other stats on the shells are the same as Seattle and Worcester. They're American 152s, and people think of those as being really floaty shells over longer ranges. These shells are less floaty. They have a much lower drag coefficient, so they don't slow down. They have the same initial speed coming out of the barrel, but it's like they've been greased or something, and so it's just like they just tweak this dumb thing. And so the shells don't slow down as much, and it makes the shells way more usable over long range. Mechanically, and so you can do that. You can do stuff with them, and that's how you could use that spotter better at those ranges. It's not like if you think about, man, well, I don't really want a spotter on a Seattle because those shells are just going to be falling from the moon.
Yeah, it ain't like that.
With Vallejo, they're not like that. So I think that's my intro for it, and you can go from there.
No, that's pretty good. I mean, I appreciate you walking through some of the stats. Again, a lot of everything Skada just talked about is on shiptool.st or the dev blog. And always encourage you guys, if you're shopping for these kind of boats, pull them up, compare them to your favorite ships on those websites. We're big fans of the wonderful people who put those things like ShipTool or ShipBuilder together for us. So big thank you and shout out to those members of the community. They tend to be kind of folks who are behind the scenes, and we don't know always who they are, which is kind of crazy, but thank you. So one thing I'll point out, I played a handful of games in this when it was in testing. I was able to play it on stream at least once, I think, or a couple of times, one stream, and had some really good games in it. I did enjoy the ship quite a bit because it reminds me of Lazo in some ways. I am like you. I'm kind of looking at it as something I want to get, but that tier 9-ness does make me want to choose something else, right? And so Vallejo, definitely an interesting ship on the list of ships to get. It's the one that's competing with Mecklenburg maybe for my next get, or perhaps the ship that's coming up after this one that we can talk about. And so, talking a little bit about Vallejo's playstyle, you said it's sensorless. There's no hydro, there's no radar, and that rapid takeoff spotter with the greased shells. If you look at the drag coefficient, I don't want you guys to think about math too much, but the drag coefficient is 0.210 on the AP shells and 0.200 on the HE shells. You don't need to think about what that number means, but for Worcester, it's 0.323 on the APs and 0.3 on the other. So it's about a third less drag coefficient than what we have on the Worcester. And what that means is those flatter arcs, which means the spotter's worth using, as you pointed out. It's not a negative to your ability to hit stuff. It's definitely a positive. And the DPM on the ship is pretty healthy. I mean, I think you can get a lot of work done. It does not have the DPM of a Worcester, but because of those flatter arcs, you can land the shells, which means you get more effective DPM. You're actually hitting more shells. Your personal realized damage per minute could potentially be higher depending on the targets you're shooting and things like that. Obviously, practice makes perfect in all of those ways. For those of you guys who were here for the last time we did this discussion back in, I think it was in May, Just Chegg was hanging out with us in chat, and he was just chatting and making a bunch of comments, and we invited him to jump in and join us. So if you want to watch the discussion from the spring, you can get Just Chegg's impressions of the ship as well. He's a Vallejo enjoyer for sure. Lots of games in this thing over on his EU account. So definitely one that's worth getting or worth watching if you're kind of curious about that. I did want to show one more thing that's just a cool historical note. So we'll do that. Hug of Death, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. These little drones on the back are real. I can't remember what they're called, but if you look up like US Navy drones World War II or whatever, you can find at least a Wikipedia article with some photographs and some other information about these little spotting drones that they had. And they're pretty cool. And I thought that was just a neat historical touch that they added to the ship here. And so if somebody's a Navy drone historian and knows about this, and you can drop the facts in chat, that's great. But just so you guys know, this is a real thing. These aren't something Wargaming made up, and I thought they were really cool. It was a neat thing to learn about and read about. Compliments of Wargaming putting those in the game, because I had no idea what they were before that. And of course, I'd forgotten what I read, but it is what it is sometimes. So we'll go back to our ship show page here. We've got one more ship to cover here. And so I want to jump to our last page, which is the Ruggiero de Lauria. Now, in preparing for this, I knew this ship was going to come out this patch. I didn't know when. And so I was really excited to see that they dropped that with the patch so that we can talk about Ruggiero de Lauria as a ship that's available for steel. They did a pre-release of this boat, like an early access steel ship, which to my memory, I think is the first time they've done early access for a steel ship, where they sold it with a camo and charged an extra 6,000 or 8,000 steel. I think it was 36K, maybe it was 5K. Now this is in the steel store. You can buy it today for 31,000 steel if that's something you're interested in. Ruggiero de Lauria has 457 millimeter guns with SAP, and so it's an Italian battleship with big SAP guns. In fact, the biggest SAP guns in the game, I believe. The pen for him is pretty good. I found when I was playing this in testing, I don't have this one in my port yet, full disclosure, but I have played a half a dozen matches in it probably. When I was playing it in testing, I found the SAP shells to work pretty well against targets at various angles. That's one of the hallmarks of semi-armor piercing rounds. But I also found that the ship wasn't the tankiest, so you're going to want to understand how to angle it and where to position it in order to survive in Ruggiero de Lauria. So those were kind of the two things that I remember most. Was I didn't dislike the SAP shells. I can't remember a ton about the accuracy of the ship. Skada, I know you just purchased the ship yourself, so this one's in your dock now, in your pier. Tell us about your impressions for Vallejo, and what do you think about what does it perform like, or what does it maybe struggle with?
Yeah,
or, what do you think?
I raced the other day to do all my super ship steel collection, so I could
Did
buy
you?
so I had enough steel to buy this on coupon, so I could talk about it because I couldn't have talked about it because I didn't test. This ship's interesting. I think I don't like just flat out right up front. I don't like the way they did distribution on it. I thought that
Sure.
sucked.
Yeah, sure.
I get it. They got a bunch of extra steel off people, but yeah, I don't. Yeah, whatever. Like I didn't care for that, so it is what it is. Moving on. Now it's available, and you can go get it with a coupon. I paid what 23,000 and change, like 23,250, I think, with a coupon, which felt like a good price, good deal for it. I was happy to use a coupon
Yeah,
on it.
it's not bad.
As far as tier 10 Italian cruisers go, you've got Colombo, the tech line. There's Sicilia, which is now in test, and I can't talk about it. If we'd done this a month or so ago, maybe I could have, but I can't talk about Sicilia.
Dope.
And then you've got Ruggiero de Lauria. Now, de Lauria is, while it has these massive 457s, 457s that do AP and SAP, it's got 8 guns instead of, what's a Colombo have, like freaking 16 guns or 12 guns or something. It's got a lot of guns.
12 or 16. I'll look it up here real quick.
But Colombo only has 380s, but with SAP that's kind of less of a thing. But the everybody knows that the tech line Italian battleships unfortunately are a disappointment because of their atrocious accuracy in Sigma.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to say I'm going to go to my grave because gosh, I don't want to be thinking about this game in that time frame. Yeah, well, that many years, fingers crossed. But the Italian battleship line came out when they had tried out that captain skill. What was that captain skill called? I can't even remember now.
Deadeye.
Yeah, and so I really feel like the original battleship line was balanced around Deadeye, and then part of the bad signal on the Sigma on the Colombo line is because of the SAP, because it's just so devastating if you land all those shells. Ask anybody who's got blasted by Venezia, right? So with the Lauria, you do have a better Sigma. You've got that 1.8 Sigma. The shell flight time is remarkably worse though because of 457s or whatever, because of gaming, right? So the dispersion's better, but the shells don't move as quickly. The SAP DPM and the APT DPM, because of things, is lower than Colombo, but I think you realize more damage and accuracy over time in Lauria because it plays so differently. Lauria has really good concealment, like most ships that have come out in the last 2 years or year and a half. You'll notice that everything that comes out has really good concealment now that's a battleship or a cruiser. In tinfoil hat theory is that they think if they put good concealment on stuff, it'll make everybody play closer together and cause more exciting battles, less sniping. Not true. Submarines are a counter to that, but either way.
Yeah, submarines are definitely trying to make that not a thing.
But comparatively, like its base concealment is 15.19. So when built for concealment, its concealment's like in the 12 range. And Colombo's is much worse, right? And so
that's not bad for a ship with 457s. I mean, that's
right.
That's
and so it's
punchy.
Yeah, so it's this ship is truly more of a battle cruiser in that regard. Like if you think of Colombo as the battleship, this is more of a battle cruiser, like a St. Vincent, like a Schlieffen, but it's a Italian representation of that. And so someday you could see a line that maybe has some of these characteristics, which are bigger guns, it's faster. Colombo is, I keep comparing it to Colombo, but I feel like that's fair. Colombo is, 5 knots slower. It's not as tanky. It has 10,000 less hit points than Colombo, right? But it's a smaller ship, and that's because of that. There's some weird things that go on with Lauria's armor, and there's some like design stuff they talk about, like, when the Italians were building this, they were going to do this like double stacked, like boiler thing, like, and that's about. Yeah. Like with the speed and everything, and that gives you like weird citadel stuff in the back of the ship.
I know. I'll jump in just real quickly. Just one thing. You talked about the speed there, and Lauria, I forgot about this from playing it, but Lauria is the fastest tier 10 battleship. It's faster than Schlieffen by 0.9 kilometers. 35 knots is quick for a BB. Really quick. It's not fast for a ship, but it's fast for a battleship. No.
Yeah, it doesn't have a speed boost, so like you're gonna get passed up by stuff with speed boost similar in speed, but with the concealment that it has, I think it's one of those battleships where you're going to want to run brisk on it. In fact, I'm sure it's probably a recommended skill from Wargaming, and that makes it wonky because that's probably not a recommended skill on your Columbo. So now what you have to have a captain that's a little bit different for one, and it's not a ton different, but those kind of things come into play. You know what one problem that Lauria doesn't have does Lauria not have smoke? I thought Lauria had smoke, but I guess it doesn't have smoke.
I think she does not have smoke.
Yeah. So, and I played it the other day in an ASIM where that really wasn't like a thing that would come into play. But it's got this like weird, like if the armor model that Clyde's showing right now, there's like a lot of steps. There's a lot of steps in the back. There's a lot going on there, and like there's a lot of shell catchers. I feel like in the back of the ship, and that's when it starts to show. That's when it starts to feel like a bad time, is if you're like in kiting angles. I feel like this ship has a lot of stuff going on back here at kiting angles that like takes full pens. And you can see the Citadel down there and where it's at in regards to like it's a little bit above the waterline.
Yep.
Pretty sure.
Yep.
Yeah. And barely. so like it isn't as tanky as Columbo is. But it's not, it's more battle cruiser play. So you're like moving at speed and you're using the concealment and you're moving in and out of spotting. And then you're alpha striking things with the SAP or with the AP. The AP is good too. Because it's 457, the AP doesn't stink.
Staying on the armor piece just real quick, we had a viewer, Pwims commented about the Citadel going up the funnels. It doesn't go up into the funnels themselves, but it does have, like you talked about, those stepped areas. I took off the casemate.
Yeah.
If you put the casemate on, it's wrapped up, right? But if you take that off, you can see these levels, which again, shell catchers at weird angles, you'll catch things in here. And so this is a weakness, and this is part of why I felt like she wasn't particularly well armored when I was testing her. Obviously we're seeing a little bit of some of the reasons why. And the rear side, like you talked about, when you're running away, look at all these great opportunities to receive shells. Now, granted, your turrets are nestled in there, so if I put those back in, some of those are filled with really heavy turret armor, barbette armor, but not all of them, right? And so there's some places to get beat up. Sorry, you were jumping on to talk about another.
No, I was just say there's some like stuff behind there why they did it that way. It has something to do with like the design study or whatever they based this on.
Trying to make
and the idea was they were like the Italians were like, if we were going to make a faster battleship, what if we double stack the boilers or something like that into smaller space? That's what that's supposed to represent, if I remember correctly. But it does mean that you like get beat up in this ship more than you do in Columbo or more tanky battleships. This ship isn't extremely tanky, and it doesn't have like the only thing it has to protect you in regards to getting the snot knocked out of you in that way is the concealment, which again isn't like epic but is pretty good. And you don't have the ability, you don't have a lot of the other tools when you think about it. You don't have like improved repair party or whatever. Like you don't, so there's that to keep in mind. I think this is an interesting ship. I don't think it's like when the other day I was like, I'll buy this ship, and mostly it was just so we could talk about it. Like, because I was like, again, like I recently talked about what I have available in the steel store. I don't care if I get Z42 anytime soon, and Vallejo's not a 10, so it's
the math says
so the math says don't get, but this, I think, obviously you're going to see a lot of these ships because of the coupon and because of its being new, and that's fine. But I think this ship is relatively balanced.
Which is not always a compliment, but it's not always an insult either. Right.
Yeah, and well, it is kind of a thing. Like when we talked at the beginning of this about, are steel ships more powerful because they take longer to get, or did they used to be because they took longer to get? I think this ship is relatively balanced, and I think a lot of people, when they spend steel on something, don't want a balanced ship.
No, they're asking for not balanced, please. Yeah.
Right. But I think this ship, I think the trades and puts it makes with the guns, and the guns are good, but again, it's not like the guns have like a 2.1 Sigma. Like, it's, you're using this crazy sap, and you don't have, you still suck at shooting DDs because of the limitations that they put on battleship sap. Including on, just totally separate, including Michelangelo's main battery, because its main battery is so big that it also has that limitation put on SAP shooting at DEs. But battleship SAP has this, like it only does 10% or whatever against DDs. And sometimes you have to look at the math, and it might make more sense with some of these Italian battleships to use the AP then. If you're just going to get overpen damage, you sometimes get better because the AP shells. Yeah, you fractional better because you get better AP overpen damage than SAP on DDs.
Not saying it's a limited advantage, but talking about the fractions you get for an overpen. I realize I said that it was maybe confusing.
No, same deal. But like this ship is really good for Blappen cruisers, and the SAP.
Yeah,
the SAP's pretty good. The SAP's pretty good on it for angled battleships and things like that. Sometimes you might go, geez, I just wish I had HE. But because there's ultimately you get to the point where the SAP isn't going to work. Nothing's going to work because of angling or some of those kind of things. And that's some of which what the 457 is trying to alleviate just by the size of the shell. And then the AP, again, is really punishing. Like I like using the AP on this against the sides of battleships and against the sides of cruisers. But if you have the SAP loaded, that's fine too. Like you're not going to feel super bad about it. You're just not going to get citadels.
Yeah.
So all in all, I think it's a pretty fun ship, and I think it's a pretty balanced ship. I think it's a ship that has like a moderate skill floor. And I think it has probably I think this is one of those ships that like in the hands of Chads, like it's going to be more powerful than like the average bear.
I keep looking at this ship and thinking, so Dead Horse a while ago asked the question, do you guys think this will show up and be viable in competitive like COTS or clan battles? And what I'm about to say doesn't directly answer that question, Dead Horse, but we can talk about it a little bit more too. But I feel like this ship is going to be one of those ships that people get, and some people play it a little bit and they're really good at it, but I don't know that it'll necessarily take the world by storm. I kind of feel like it's going to be sort of Slava-like in terms of adoption and popularity. Not necessarily that it plays like Slava or that it runs like Slava or that it is like, because I don't think that's true. But I think that it's pretty good, and like you said, in the hands of Chads it'll be really good. And I think but I don't know that it really is going to come into clan battles. We looked at the armor profile. I know that that's a challenge for it. I think the SAP works really well on some targets and less well on others, and that might be a reason for people to not consider it for competitive play. I think if something like COTS has an interesting set of bands and they open it up to 10 or 12 players, like they sometimes have bigger teams, or larger teams than what we have in clan battles, right? In tournament play, not just specifically COTS, but just tournaments. I think you could give up a ship slot to a Lauria or something like that and that kind of thing. I am not, again, competitive lord, so I can't speak to what's really going to happen in COTS, but I can talk about, mid-level clan battles, right? Which is where we live our lives. I think you could run it in there, but there's some real reliable classic old standbys that I think people are going to have a hard time giving up unless they can lay their finger on a specific thing that Ruggiero is going to do this for us, and we'll build a strategy around that. And I don't think it'll unseat things, but you'll see a few, and especially now while it's new and the coupon's out, I think you'll see them in randoms quite a bit. I think we'll see them in maybe some of the mid or lower levels of clan battles now where people are testing them out. And then, in 6 months or a year, we'll go, okay, how many are really out there? And that's when we're really going to know.
Yeah, and again, like I said at the beginning of this, because of the distribution method, you can't go look at stats on this ship now and draw any conclusion.
That's right, because all of those guys were steel Chads, right?
If you go, well, it's a very interesting thing. When you look at the stats on any for the ship, the top players in it are the guys from the kind of clans you think of, right?
Sure.
These are guys who are like, man, I have so much steel, I don't know what to do with it. I'm Merc and I Bravo League with other people, and I get all the steel I can get forever with everything.
I'm gonna get a steel camo for Yodo.
It's just so boring that they don't have more steel things for me. So they bought this, and they bought every steel camo they could buy during that sale or whatever.
Listen,
and so those
if you
guys
got
who
the
play
steel,
this ship,
spend it, right? Yeah,
hey, good for you. Good for you. Glad you've won World Warships. So this thing for you, those guys have really good stats in this ship, and they've been playing it for a few months when nobody else had it, and some of those guys have really good stats. The other side of the coin from that sale, and you've all seen them in randoms, is somebody who had a bunch of steel and for whatever reason
blew it on this,
bought this. Maybe they have other steel battleships, maybe they don't have any other steel ships, but they were waiting for a new steel battleship and they had 36,000 steel and they bought this, and they play it and they aren't good in it, and their stats reflect that, right? They have a lot of games in it with low PR and low win rates and low damage, so it's a real Tale of Two Cities right now as far as the stats on the leaderboard go for NA, and I'm sure that's the case in EU and similar, right? And so for the last few months, when I would see a Lauria in a random, I would just look at the clan take and go, okay, well that person's going to be a problem, or I'm not. That person's not.
Yeah.
You know, and you play your own way, right? Everybody slots themselves in certain places. Do I have to worry about this or not? Now that it's out for everybody,
yep,
those numbers are going to change over time, and it's going to take a few months as more normal, but more of the general populace
the general
has access
community.
to the ship.
Yeah, the general
The
population.
general community has access to the ship and plays it. The stats are going to normalize, and we'll see. And that said, when you look at the stats for the people who have had it early, and the great players who have had it early, who have really good PRs in it or really good win rates in it, they may even have really good average damage in it. But compared to some other ships that have high average damage, it's not amazingly high. And so, you know, grain of salt are to be taken here. Again, I think this ship is well balanced. I think the gun output that it brings to the battle is balanced against its mediocre armor and health pool and ability to sustain. And so I do not think that this is like an overpowered ship in any way. I think it's very well balanced. And again, like I said, that may suck. Because if you spend your steel on something, you may not want it to be balanced. You might want to feel more
might
like
want it to be like a Bourgogne or something.
You might want to feel like it gives you an edge, and I don't know that this ship does.
Yeah.
But again, I've only played it a couple times since I got it this week, and so I have to see as now I'm part of the normal populace that has it. I'll have to see how it feels.
Mhm.
I have a lot of games in the ship from when in test that I can't speak to and how it played then, and it's been months. Like, we tested this ship a long time ago, and then when it finally came out, it was like, we're putting it out in this gimmick, blah blah blah. And so that has been in between. I don't even remember when this ship went into test, but it was a long time ago. So
yeah, okay. If your name is Peter and you just requested permissions to access the Kitakami calculator spreadsheet, yes, you can have your own copy. You just want to go to the file menu and select make a copy. It's all you. I don't know if you just heard my phone ding right there, but so yeah, Ruggiero, you know, you made one comment I wanted to address, and then I think we can probably do our final picks and talk about what we would maybe get if we were new to the thing. But one thing, you know, you talked a little bit about how the ship's balanced, about how it has weaknesses and it has strengths, and that is going to make the skill floor non-zero. You know, you said it was moderate, and I didn't play as many games as you in it, but I would agree that sounds about right. You know, you can't just shove it into something and expect it to do well, and practice will improve your performance in this thing, because you're going to learn how you take big hits and how to not do that, right? And so I think spending some time with Ruggiero de Lauria, once you've got it, if you get it, is going to be worth your time. Do some thinking, watch some YouTube videos, take a look at the armor profile, understand how that stuff works, and then try to go out there and work with your own play style and your own skill level, and work on making that better than it was. We had a comment too from JCR that said, SAP is hard for me to figure out. One of the things about SAP that's really useful to know, if you have a rough idea about armor thicknesses of your enemy ships, is you can come in and go to a tool like Ship Tool, and you can see what the penetration millimeters are for the SAP shells. So de Lauria here has a 114 millimeter penetration on its SAP shells, and unlike AP, that doesn't change when you go longer shells or shorter shells. It's the same all the time, just like HE penetration. And so if you know that de Lauria has 114 millimeter penetration, you can turn around and apply that and understand which ships you're going to just absolutely smash with it, and which ships 114 is not going to punch through the sides of battleships, but it would punch through lighter cruisers. And so on those battleships, you just need to raise those shells up a little bit higher, put them onto the superstructure, and they should just do massive damage. You're not going to get citadels on a heavily armored target when you do that, but you will be able to get bigger damage shots with it. So when the SAP is singing for you, it'll do really good work, but it does take some understanding of the armor that you're going to pen and the armor that you're shooting at as well. So take that and play with that for a bit, and then hopefully that helps. If that's not what confuses you about SAP JCR, then I've wasted your time. I apologize. But I thought I'd share that with folks too. And it's worth understanding some of that stuff if you can. The ricochet angles are really good too, 70 to 80 degrees. So they start ricocheting at 70 and they guarantee ricochets at 80 degrees, which means that you can shoot at more angles than you can with AP and still get full pens, which is great. So bear those 2 or 3 things that we just shared with you in mind, and hopefully that helps out. And again, I'm reading the ricochet angles from Ruggiero. There may be other sap shells that have variants of that, but 70 to 80 is a really common number. In that case, around this time, usually in the video, we will go back and say, maybe we're picking one from each class or something, you know, that kind of a thing. We could probably do that, or maybe even just pick our top 3. I'll go first because I always make you go first, I think, because I like to see what you say and then react to it. And I'll give you that opportunity this time. So if we go back to our first page, we've got Roosevelt, Shikishima, Mecklenburg, Incomparable, Bourgogne, Austin. And our second page, Gato, Stalingrad, Z42, Ragnar, Plymouth, Vallejo, and now we've added Ruggiero de Lauria to it. So I'm going to go top 3. Sunflare says go top 3, so we're going to do top 3. I like that. I have to put Bourgogne in the list, so I'm going to grab Bourgogne for sure. I'm kind of tempted to put like a Mecklenburg in there, even though I don't have it yet. I've played a very small number of battles in it. I like Austin quite a bit, and I like Plymouth quite a bit. So my picks are all going to be weird. I like Stalingrad well enough, but I think I would just go with Petro at this point. If I was only taking 3 ships. Gato is interesting. I did just pick it up. I need more time with it before I can decide if it's in my top 3. Ruggiero is kind of interesting too. I'm going to say for me right now, it's Bourgogne, Austin, and I'm going to throw Ruggiero in there. If I could just grab 3 and I didn't have any of these boats, I'd grab Bourgogne, Austin, and Ruggiero. Ruggiero totally is an experimental pick for me. It's one that I want to see, after 35 battles, 25 battles, how I would do in it. So I don't know that that's a strong pick for my particular playstyle. But Bourgogne, Austin, Ruggiero. Skada, what do you think? Top 3.
Yeah, I'm Bourgogne. That's the first one. First steel ship I ever bought, and still one that I don't have any qualms about ever playing. It feels like a comfortable pair of shoes, and I enjoy playing it still.
Yeah,
it's that way. This is a hard list because honestly, I don't really like a lot of these ships like on the daily.
As a frequent player, yeah.
Yeah, I don't. There's so many ships in game that like there's just a lot of stuff that I find more enjoyable to play. And then again, I don't like playing 10s a whole lot because I'm not very good, and everybody up there is so good. But
that's nice.
But
you to say about them.
So Bourgogne, I think number 2 would be Mecklenburg because I find Mecklenburg to be enjoyable. You build Mecklenburg when for randoms. Mecklenburg is built as if standard survivability battleship, not really secondary battleship. But secondary Mecklenburg in ASIM battles is a hoot. So like if you have Mecklenburg and you want to mess around with your modules and go play it as a secondary battleship in the ASIM battles, it's a ton of fun in there doing that. It's stupid. Jimbo and I believe both were having a car. I think it was Jimbo and I. Yeah, Jimbo. So much fun in ASIMs. So, we did the same thing. And it's stupid fun in ASIMs with the torpedoes and those guns, and you can just crush all those like lower tier cruisers and battleships. It's fun. And so that's, if I just want smiles, I like Mecklenburg for that. I like it in randoms too, though, when you play it in the traditional manner that it's supposed to be played, because I like that you can ride HE on it. I like that the AA makes CVs think twice about dropping you, which isn't normal in a German battleship. And so that's fun. As far as it's a third pick. Man, I don't like Ragnar very much. I don't have Z42. So the DD thing for me is kind of like, man, I wish there was a DD. I wish there was a steel DD I liked. You ever heard of Summers?
I feel the same way. I wish there was a steel DD that I liked.
I wish Summers was still
Ragnar's
here for
okay.
steel. I wish Summers was still here, and because it would be a counter. It's a torpedo boat that was here for steel, that was removed for reasons.
Yeah.
I know. I thought at the time they said it got removed because people weren't buying it anymore. I don't know why that matters, but anyway, I wish it was still here.
Yeah.
And thus, then I would have it, and I don't. And I wouldn't buy it for 60,000 steel in an auction. So call me crazy.
What kind of fool would do that?
So that's not a choice. Like thinking of historical steel ships, that's one I wish was here. FDR you don't need. Like it is whatever. Like it's like I said, I use it for like stupid like mission farming and co-ops because it's like whatever. I don't know. As far as the cruisers go, I think Plymouth's fun, but I never play it.
Yeah.
I think Stalingrad's fine in randoms as far as the historical one goes. Stalingrad's probably like, oh, I get that one. You like Austin a lot more than I do, and it's not that I don't understand the concepts of Austin. I just don't want to. I just don't want to. Like it just isn't like I don't want to go get dev struck by somebody in an Austin. It just doesn't appeal to me. At least in Xenon, I can smoke myself and vomit torpedoes and do other things. And maybe I can't do the crazy gimmick, but I can just like play light cruiser. Yeah. I think the thing that bugs me about Austin is that you just live and die by that gimmick.
I get
so
you.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Bourgogne and Mecklenburg, and then that's it. I don't know.
You're stopping it too. You're just saying,
whatever.
Who cares? Forget it.
Shikishima, yeah, whatever. We talked about all these other ones. The Lauria is new. I don't think you need the Lauria. Like, it's whatever.
If I
had Vallejo, I might say Vallejo.
If you're not going to use that last slide, can I put a Plymouth in there? Can you buy me a Plymouth real quick? I feel sad that I left Plymouth
whatever.
Behind. No, you do what you. I like that you called too. I just said that's it. It's funny because when I look at this same list, I have some of those same thoughts where I have 7 of these 12, 13 ships, 7 of the 13 ships. I have both the DDs. I like Ragnar better than Z42, but I don't need either of them to be happy. I don't know if, jury's out for me on Gato if I'm going to like that and like submarine play and stuff like that. Stalingrad's fine. I would just pick something else. I like my Bourgogne. I like my Austin. I like my Plymouth. Of the ships that I own, those 3 are easily my favorites. The ones that I don't own, the ones that look interesting to me, I guess I can put this up so you guys can see it. The ones that I don't own here are at the top. I would go with, if I was picking 3 out of that list, Lauria, Mecklenburg, and Vallejo. But I don't know. I haven't owned these ones and spent a lot of time with them, so I can't speak to that quite as with as much authority, as it were. But nah, I think that's pretty legit.
Yeah, I'd like to see a torpedo destroyer in here. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like that's an underserved community, and if they're trying to tell you get Gato instead, pound sand. Like, I don't want that. Yeah,
that's not a destroyer.
I'd like to see a torpedo destroyer in there. I'd like to see. I think cruisers are there's a couple of light cruisers, and then there's Stalingrad. But I'd like to see another. I
want to see something like a Henry in here, or like a Venezia, something that runs fast and isn't like a heavy tanky guy and isn't like a light cruiser, right? I want something that fills that void, maybe. I don't know. That'd be cool.
I don't know. There's just something there. I feel like there's another kind of cruiser. I assume that sometime this year they're going to come out with there's going to be a steel ship that gets created that's the best thing at killing submarines ever. And yes. I don't know if it's a cruiser with area SW that also drops like mines and has like special hydros that
has the submarine hydro and
And now that I even make up this ship, I know that it's going to be the research bureau because the steel store gets jerked around now.
I know what you're thinking.
Yeah, you're right. That's going to be a research bureau ship. It won't be a steel ship anymore. I don't know. There's some stuff that I would like. That I would like more. We don't need more battleships here.
Nope.
Stop adding battleships to this store. Stop putting battleships here for a while. Put some battleships in the coal store, for crying out loud.
That's where we need them. That's where we need them. Because we were just looking at the numbers of coal battleships are low, right?
Yeah. Do it, Jerry. Get it together, Jerry.
Let's get Jerry on the phone here.
Jerry at WARGAMING.
Let me just pull a little Lord of Droid. I went to call Jerry here on the phone.
Yeah.
See if I can get him to. Jerry, can we add some more coal battleship? Yeah, I guess we can.
I don't know. I'm in the shower.
Oh man, I'd love to call Jerry and talk with him. That'd be great. Yeah. If only Jerry was real and I had his phone number and he would do what I asked. Skada, thanks for being here with us today and sharing your thoughts on the ships. I know that we're a couple of regular guys talking about a bunch of regular ships, and having more than just one perspective is super helpful. So I appreciate you taking some of your Saturday and spending that with us. Chat, thanks for being here as well. We appreciate the comments and questions. I know we missed a bunch of them, but hopefully we managed to share some information about each of these boats, some of our experiences, and a little bit more just about what's written about them as well. Don't forget, you can always do a lot of research on this stuff. Get out there and dig into this as much as you can. Watch YouTube videos, talk to people who played the ships. And then check out cool sites like Shipbuilder, like shiptool.st, that kind of stuff. And get as educated as you can before you make a steel ship purchase. Use a coupon whenever you can. You never want to pay full price for something if you can get a coupon for it. If you're making enough steel that you can afford a full price steel ship, then that advice is not for you. Just go ahead. Don't let me tell you how to live your life. Skada, any final comments, thoughts, ideas for the people?
Yeah, it's always fun to do these. We've done now the coal and the steel again. We don't have to do these for another half a year or something, which is always appealing. We tend to do these around the coupons.
Yeah.
I think the next time we get together, folks, and we do a ship show, I think because we're not going to do. We did a dockyard one because I wanted to do that. It's stupid.
Yep.
We're never going to do that again. But
Not for a long time.
But and I don't think we have any plans to do a research bureau one. That's not the next one, is it? I think where we've been talking about doing some of these where we talk about tier 10 tech tree ships.
Yes.
And so I think we've talked about splitting those up into classes maybe.
Yeah.
And so if that concept is interesting to you, dear viewers, drop a comment or something in chat and let us know that's something you might want us to do. If you want to hear us yammer on about other things that are easily attainable, then these things, we've been talking about that for a long time. And then there's all kinds of golden barnacles is really the next thing. But but we've talked about doing that kind of thing in the future. I think we've also talked about doing a ship show about submarines. But honestly, if you want to know about submarines, you should go watch Euro's video on how to play them and just leave us alone because that's the best source on the internet. But if you're interested, if you are interested in the concept of a tech tree tier 10 ship show where we break it down and go, I think that's how we were going to do it, right? We're just going to talk about destroyers. We're just going to talk about cruisers or something. If that interests you, drop a comment. Let us know. Hang out in the Discord. Tell us that's something you'd like to see, and maybe that's the next time you'll see us doing one of these in the future.
Yeah, that could be. That's been kind of my 2024 idea, is maybe trying to get some of those going, and then maybe one about super ships as well, right? We talked about that in the past.
Yeah, we talked about doing the super ship one too. I forgot if that was the next one or not. We have a roadmap. This is legitimate, folks. There's a roadmap. There's project planning that goes into this whole operation.
Unfortunately, because that's what I do at work, it's trickling into my enjoyment activities as
because
well.
the difference is that I haven't been able to adapt what I do at work to expand upon this stuff, which is I can't hire people to improve your capability to do these tasks.
No, Clyde Place has to make a heck of a lot more money before I make you HR. So it's going to be a tough day. It's a tough road to hoe to get to a place where I need you to hire me a visual artist or something.
Oh yeah, need somebody just to make emojis. Anyway.
Right. Anyway, no,
I don't want to take away the things you like doing, though.
Yeah, that's true. We'll pick the right stuff, right? We'll get somebody to edit news videos. That's the first thing. But,
right.
Anyway, thank you, everybody. I appreciate you coming and being a part of the show. If you liked this and you're watching on YouTube and you'd like to be a part of this live, you can come and join us. Twitch.tv/ClydePlaysLive is the URL. And maybe you're new to Twitch, or maybe you don't do Twitch, and maybe Twitch is scary or whatever. I assure you, trust us, it is not scary. It's a thing you could come check out. If you don't want to, you don't have to. We do have, as Skada just mentioned, a Discord. You can join that. The link will be in the description of this video. It's also down below in the About Me section right here on Twitch. You can join us on Discord, where we keep the ship conversation going every single day. Literally, I comment in there every day. So it is not a place that I've created to banish viewers to all by themselves. Me and Scott are in there talking ships with folks all the time. And it's a really great crew in there. If you choose to join us, we'd love to have you. And Twitter is another place that exists. They renamed it, and I don't think that's cool, but whatever. And I think that's about all I got to say. Scott, say goodbye to the people.
Whammy!
All right. See you later, everybody.
See, we made that take 3.5 hours. Go down there to the steel store and get yourself some Gato. Golly gosh darn it.